Welcome to Proles of the Round Table.
Hello and welcome to Proles of the Round Table, where we sit down, have a few drinks, and talk leftist history. Please do us a favor and subscribe on your favorite podcast app, and rate/review the show to help extend our reach. It really does help. We started a Patreon that you can give to if you like the show, and we have a ton of benefits for donations at any level. Find out more at patreon.com/prolespod. Our current patrons are Alexander J. Hill, Arturo Rivera, Bennett Morris, Brock Neufeld, Commosaurus Rex, Danny, Dean Matthews, Diego Cordoba, Ewan Simpson, Our Filthy Comrade, Greg Harsh, Haider Al-Mohammed, Joshua Keene, Lavender Samyavadi, Bolshi, and Nathan Bullock. Pablo Kidd, Peter RK Drank a Beer Once, Sajid Abbas, and Sebastian. All of these people are heroes of the revolution and make it so much easier for us to make this podcast for you. So besides our patron, we want to thank the episode's primary sponsor, without whom we wouldn't have these nice microphones. So big thanks to our sponsor, Warner Brothers. Today with us, we've got Ethan. What are you drinking tonight, Ethan?
So right now I've got a Pabst Blue Ribbon I got from the gas station on the way over here.
So that's 3-2.
Yeah. So it's like water.
Sad.
No, but when I'm done with that, I've got these. It's Asahi. It's some sort of Japanese lager, some sort of like weird reactionary beer, but
Imperialist
it tastes
Japanese
pretty good.
Beer. Yeah. Ezra, what you got?
Mango La Croix.
La Croix.
On brand.
Wow.
On brand La Croix.
Wow. Yeah.
We've got Mac here as well, for the first time since the first podcast episode we did. So what you drinking, Mac?
Happy to be here, and I am drinking the classic water tonight.
Essence of Life. Mm-hmm. Justin, what you got?
I have Fugly Yuzu and Ugly Fruit IPA from Oscar Blues.
Wow.
It's actually really good.
Oh, nice.
It's got Japanese and Jamaican citrus fruits in it.
Not fugly at all.
Delicious. I'm gonna snake one later. And I am Jeremy, and I'm drinking Tsingtao, which is, of course, the people's beer. This is like the fourth podcast in a row that I've been drinking this beer. It's not even really that good, but I don't know.
But you feel good drinking it.
I feel good drinking it.
It has
right.
the right aesthetic.
It's it does have the correct aesthetic for defending social imperialism.
Ideologically correct beer.
It's ideologically correct beer. It is an imported premium lager, though. So tonight's subject is going to be the Soviet cinema, kind of running down a history. Ethan's going to be our subject matter expert. So where do we want to begin, Ethan?
Well, we'll begin before the revolution, because in some people don't know this, but in 1917 there was a revolution in the Russian Empire. No, but
big if true.
No, but so I'm just gonna start kind of right before the beginning,
right.
Like the prequel to Soviet
origin
film.
story.
Yeah, no, so there was already a tradition of film experimentation and viewing. Like there were cinemas and people went and watched movies and newsreels. Those were a big thing. But yeah, and so even in 1913, there's this poet named Vladimir Mayakovsky, who we're going to talk about more later. He said, "Theaters brought itself to ruin and must bequeath its inheritance to cinema." So already the artistic...
The merits?
What?
Merits?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, theater is still the purest form of
Oh
proletariat.
my God.
No. But the just the tides, like the trend in
Yeah.
like where the innovation was happening and where the interesting stuff was happening in Russia was moving towards film already. And so during World War I, there was this. So the Skobelev Committee of the Assistance to the Wounded Soldiers of the General Staff. That's the title. Was a
Russians do not fuck around with their acronyms at all.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what the acronym is in Russian. Hopefully, it's something fun. But it was a. I don't know. They did a lot of stuff, but they had a film committee, and so during World War One, they had the exclusive rights to film battles. People were making newsreels. They were filming stuff on the front, sending it back, and making these newsreels and like live war shorts that they would send back to show everyone how the war was going. And that was founded in 1904. But anyway, so then you get 1917 in February. There was this the aforementioned revolution.
Never heard of it.
The first half.
The first half.
The February Revolution.
The beta test of revolution.
Well, we got rid of the Tsar, so that was good.
Sort of got rid of him.
Well, I mean,
He
removed
fucked
him
off to
from
the middle of nowhere. Yeah.
Well, they got him eventually.
Yeah.
And his family. Fuck that stupid Amazon show. That's dumb. All right. The Romanovs. Stupid. We missed a couple. All right.
That's fine. We're just identifying them now for after the next revolution.
So the first, technically the first film produced after the revolution was called Great Days of the Russian Revolution from February 28th to March 4th, released by the Petrograd Soviet. It collected film of the aftermath of the various Petrograd revolts, like burnt prisons, crowds taking coats of arms off of buildings, that sort of thing. And so they showed this to people to like build hype for like, look what's happening.
The revolution's lit.
Yeah, basically. And it's funny because there's this American journalist named Donald Thompson who took a lot of the same footage, cut it together, and made a video that he sent back to, or a film that he sent back to the U.S., which was called Bloodstained Russia, to show like the crimes of the Bolsheviks and everything.
I want to watch that so badly.
I don't know. Yeah, I didn't look. I don't know if you can find it. Hopefully you can. Bloodstained Russia. This is not the last of like the same footage being shown in America as like
Reefer Madness style.
basically. I was trying to think of a pun involving red and reefer, but I don't know. All right.
Such a weak.
What?
Weak. Yeah, Pianikov is weak.
Fuck.
Okay. So after the revolution, the February Revolution, obviously a lot of things are happening really quickly. There's 130 new trade unions that pop up between March and April. 9 professional organizations specifically related to film and like the various trades and industries involved in that. And so then you get May Day, 1917. The Moscow Soviet of Workers' Deputies make a film like to celebrate May Day with no assistance from the film industry because, I'll talk about what the film industry did after the revolution in a second here, but like there was a Kodak store in Moscow and they were like, hey, can you give us some film stock? And they were like, we don't have any. Come back later. Yeah, so they were able to scrounge up some film stock, but like without the support of any capitalist film firms. Yeah, and so then you get to October, which is when the real shit starts to happen.
The real revolution.
Real shit. February Revolution. I sleep.
October Revolution.
Real shit. Yeah, but so this is the Bolsheviks depose the provisional government and take control, and most of the filmmakers and actors they flee and they head to southern Russia, which is mostly controlled by the White Army. Mm-hmm. Like Ukraine, a lot of reactionary shit was happening there. I'm glad that's over with.
Yeah, glad we moved past that stage.
Yeah, but so they take a ton of their equipment and their supplies with them. So like the big names in filmmaking in Russia are all gone, and so it kind of like guts the creative potential right off the bat. And so at this point, they're mainly showing newsreels. Like there weren't a ton of movies being made because these people like were scared to make movies because they were like, oh, we're counter-revolutionaries, and so yeah, but so they
talk to.
That's exactly how they speak.
Well, and a lot of the theaters are suffering from like electricity rationing and wood rationing, which they needed the wood to heat their theaters.
Sounds like communism to me.
Well, it's a lot of wars and bad stuff. So listen, it's called war communism. Look it up.
Oh god.
No, so
Fuck off.
Yeah. So anyway, a lot of the film industry leaves to like the White Army control. But interestingly enough, a lot of actors and directors in the theater stayed in Bolshevik-controlled territory in larger proportions because, in general, they were more progressive and like ideologically closer to the people.
This is Ethan selling theater real hard.
It's not the last. It's like, now that I've got you all here, this episode's actually about so then we get to November, which is technically when so it's called the October Revolution, but like they don't establish the Russian Socialist Federation till November. On November 8th, you've got the Second All-Russian Congress, and that's where they pass the famous Peace Spread Land decrees that everyone's big fans of. And then the 9th.
Big fan.
Yeah, absolutely. The next day, the State Commission on Education, they're like, all right, we're creating a film subsection, and it's under the supervision of Nadezhda Krupskaya, who is Lenin's wife. And so the new government, they call a meeting of artists in Petrograd. Like all artists are like, show up. We want to talk about this. We want to figure out what you guys need. 5 artists show up. You have 3 poets, including the aforementioned Mayakovsky, 1 painter, and 1 theater guy. Most of the influential cinema folks who were left, who hadn't fled, they were in a union called the Union of Workers in the Cinematographic Art, which is funny because they didn't actually have any workers in it. That was a union of like theater owners and like camera company. Like, yeah, it was no actual workers. So, and at this point, they released a statement. This union, they released a statement saying like, "Don't nationalize us, please." But basically, like they were,
bro, don't nationalize me.
Basically, yeah, they were basically strong enough to do this because they had control of all the trade papers, all this stuff. They could prevent delivery of new films to nationalized theaters, which, like, so they were it was kind of a stranglehold on new productions. So, like, they couldn't. So yeah, they were able to say, we're not going to work with you except on our terms, and they could get away with it basically, which sucks. And so the Presidium of the Moscow Soviet, they issued a response, like a public response, and they said, okay, first, we're not going to seize anything in the film industry, and we don't want anybody to do that on our behalf, so everyone chill. Number 2, we want everybody, all of you filmmakers, declare your inventory, like your cameras, your film stock, all of this, any accessories and means of production. Number 3, you can't sell any of that, and you can't close any of your theaters or your production facilities. You still have to show stuff so people can go see movies, and you still have to keep making movies. And so then as a result of having to declare this film stock, a lot of the supplies, they hide them. They're like, oh yeah, no, we definitely don't have any. So
Kulaks of the film.
Exactly. No, that's like literally exactly what it is. And so the Presidium nationalizes that aforementioned Skobelev committee. So now they have all of the film from the war, which is fun. And then the Commissariat of Education opens up a, quote, section of independent educational organizations, which they called Prolet Cult. KUL, it's short for culture, not like cult. It's not scary. It's good, actually. It's good, actually.
That's basically what theater is anyway.
This episode's over.
I'm going
to go out the window.
It's going to stand up on you and try to fight you.
Oh, shit.
So, in May, they transferred the functions of the film. So, of that Skobelev committee, they transferred all the film and stuff to the cinema committee, which was called Goskino. This is going to change like 6 times throughout the Soviet Union, the name of this cinema committee. And at this point, they're mostly concerned with film as an educational tool. Like, they're not really concerned about entertainment. They're mostly concerned about education and propaganda. And so there's actually a really good essay by Trotsky about...
Who was that?
You have to censor that.
But it was a essay by...
By Leon.
No, it was an essay by...
his name.
No, it was an essay by Trotsky where he's talking about like the 3 major things that the Bolsheviks need to take control of to like ideologically secure the proletariat, and it's alcohol, churches and cinema. And I'll get back to what Trotsky says in a bit, but he releases that at this point. But the big thing for this like at the very beginning, it sets a real bad tone for the whole cinema thing, is this motherfucker named Jacques Sobrario. And he's an Italian representative in Russia of these various Italian firms. And so he lost a lot of business in the revolution, like film business and stuff, because like shit was getting nationalized, and all of his people left, and they have to lose all their stock. Like it was a bad deal for him.
It's the worst deal.
But so in spring 1918, he starts seeing dollar signs, as capitalists tend to do. He sends a letter to the Moscow Cinema Committee. He's like, all right, listen, I know a lot about film stuff, and I want to help you guys get set up. Let me help you. And they figure he's a businessman of like average greediness. Like they're like, I mean, he's obviously not interested in the revolution, but he can probably help us out, like if we give him money for it. So here's what they do. They deposit $1 million in gold, in which I think in contemporary, that was $1 million 1917 money, or 1918 money, which is a lot more now. Oh, okay. Yeah, no, that's $18 million. I wrote that down. 18. So the equivalent of $18 million in gold in this New York bank. And they say, okay, we need you to go buy cameras, projectors, like school projectors, like slide projectors, educational films, film machines, projection booths, generators, 1 million meters of negative film, which is like, yeah, and then 3 million meters of positive film. And so the difference basically is that positive film is harder to.
It's like self-help.
Stop it. God damn it.
No, it's
That was so bad.
no, positive film is like
Self-crit.
it's when you're less concerned about the quality. So like for educational films, because it's harder to control like the color and stuff. They call it slide film because you can make slides out of it very easily. Anyway, 3 million meters of that. So they just want him to buy enough supplies to outfit several big Soviet production units. And so they give him an advance of $10,000. And they're like, all right, we'll give you another 50 grand when you deliver all the equipment. And so he's like, okay, great. So he goes to America, which if he was really going to do this, he would have gone to Germany because they were one of the few countries that were doing business with the brand new Russian Socialist Federation. But he goes to New York, and he proceeds to buy a bunch of shit. Like he buys worthless equipment from companies that he either owns or has like a stake in. And then he bills, he bills the Socialist Federation for this shitty equipment that he's getting a cut on. So, for example, he bought, like, one of the things on the list is he buys this, like, shitty ancient projector that doesn't work for $70. And then he puts it on the ledger. Yeah, that cost $277. So he's basically pocketing $200.
Sweet. Sounds like a stand-up guy.
Yeah, exactly. And then he stores it in warehouses and insures it with policies from companies that he also has a stake in, that either owns or has a stake in, or his friends do. So, and he's taking this. And he's taking this money. He's living in this huge Central Park West apartment. He buys these 2 huge town cars. He's got jewelry, and he's taking months and months to do all this stuff. And then the bank is like, hey, you gotta ship all this stuff, or else you're not gonna have enough money left to ship it over to Russia. And he's like, okay. So what he does is he deposits all of his holdings out of the country, out of the United States, and he goes on the lam to Europe. And so the Socialist Federation has a lawyer named Charles Recht on retain.
Get wrecked.
I was waiting for someone to do it.
Get wrecked.
They had a lawyer on retainer, and he sued Sobrario and the bank. And so New York gets a warrant to seize this guy's assets, Sobrario's assets, but he's already moved out everything from his office except for like his furniture, and he's got like one shitty old car. And so so the IRS actually like goes after him because he's trying to skip out on, he didn't pay taxes on any of this. Like obviously that's the worst part. So critical support for the IRS, I guess, in this particular instance. Yeah, but then the problem is eventually they drop the indictment because the U.S. courts ruled that, well, the Russian Socialist Federation isn't a legitimate state, so you can't sue.
Yeah.
Yeah, so literally nothing Sobrario ever bought makes it to Russia. And he went to Italy and bought a castle
Wow.
with all that money.
Wow.
Very cool.
Fuck that guy.
He's terrible. Well, here's the thing. So at the time, the Socialist Federation had the total like exportable currency reserves, like all the gold and like all the stuff that they could use to buy stuff from other countries. They had $500 million. So they spent 1/500th of their total exportable currency on rebuilding the cinema industry, and they got shit
Fucked.
for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, they got nothing. And so so that kind of sets a bad tone with the Soviet government. They're like, we're not going to give you any fucking money. Look what you just did with $1 million. So, yeah, so it kind of sucks. So the entire film industry at this point is still dependent on the, quote, goodwill of private firms. Like, hey, listen, we won't nationalize you if you keep making movies, okay? And they're like, all right. But then they're still able to scrounge up some films. So the Goskino, the cinema committee, they're still making some movies here and there. Vladimir Mayakovsky, this like poet, probably I would say he's the most famous poet from the Soviet Union. Okay. And I'll keep talking about him until 1930. But he wrote and acted in several films at this time. Like he was really big on like proletarian cinema and proletarian art and like art that like about the revolution. It was great. So then you get the first May Day after the revolution. And they're making a film specifically for it. So there's this fun quote from one of the cameramen. He says, Ilyich, Lenin, was in his never altered thin black topcoat and his gray cap. And before reaching the truck, he stopped. He pulled out a little notebook, took some notes. And then he saw me with the camera. He came up to me and said quietly and seriously, film less of me, comrade. More of those who are going to listen to me. The comrades were on their way to the front. Yeah, he was a good dude.
It's too good.
He's a good man. Yeah, and so a lot of films were they were filming stuff and then sending it out to the soldiers fighting on the front of the Civil War, because that was their main thing. But so then we're in May of 1918 here. So Goskino, again the cinema committee, they have a conference and they want to try and get the capitalists under control, because there's actually a lot of widespread speculation on film stock because it's so limited because everyone's hoarding their supply.
The market is so efficient.
Yeah, exactly. And so they release another statement. They're okay. Number 1, register your fucking film stock. And then number 2, send us a list of what like you're going to be. If you own a theater, show us a list of what you're going to be showing. And number 3, register all of your equipment and ration your electricity, or else we're going to shut you down and fine you. Well, so what happens?
Sounds authoritarian.
Well, what happens is basically all raw film stock disappears.
Wow.
And production of new films basically stops. And so the point of this though is that like basically the committee tried to work with existing private firms like a bunch of times. They were like, listen, we're trying to work with you here, and every single time they were like,
please, sir, can I have some films?
Basically, please, Mr. Capitalist, can I have some film stock? Yeah, so that wasn't working until basically it wasn't until the Civil War was over that they were able to get control of the film industry. But
is this when my man's comes in?
My man's.
Trotsky?
No. Oh, no. He didn't.
You can probably hear that look through the recording.
This podcast is over. It's the last episode of Proles. You're here.
All right. So then something interesting that happens in 1918 is called the Agit train. So it's a train that had a printing press on it for the publication of newspapers. It had an entire theater company traveling with it. They were writing and performing plays. And a film crew headed by this veteran cameraman who later worked with Eisenstein, who we'll talk about in a minute. They were sending this train to the front to entertain the troops. But they were able to print newspapers, do plays, make films, make plays as they were traveling. And so they went to the front to entertain the troops, and then once they were done there, they went to the Western Front and they stopped in cities to show films to people, including children's film screenings. They showed anti-white films, anti-white army.
I knew it.
White genocide films.
White genocide is real. It's what Marxists really want.
They had films promoting literacy, sanitation. Films that were anti-alcohol films. They sold pamphlets and books and newspapers. They gave away 60,000 educational books for free. They had big mass meetings. Cameramen were filming the various places, and then painters and artists were painting and sketching these different towns. And then when they would go to different towns all across Russia, they would show people these films, and they would give people these sketches and paintings so that people could know what other parts of like Russia looked like, because a lot of these people, you never leave your village. So like it's showing the different cultures, like trying to build some like solidarity amongst the different towns and villages in the Socialist Federation. And so then the next summer they try something similar with an Agit steamboat, where they send this was a brainchild of Molotov and Krupskaya. But no, so they did the kind of the same thing, and they went down the Kama and the Volga rivers. But the fun thing with this is that they were towing a theater, like with a stage and seats for 800 people. This steamboat's just towing a theater, and they would park it and like dock it, and people would just come on and watch plays. And they had a filmmaking team. Yeah, it was awesome.
So what you're saying is that the Sex Pistols were just ripping off the Soviet Union when they went down the Thames.
I think that's before my time.
It's before mine too, you asshole. I read.
I read once and it was awful.
It's a terrible experience.
So then, so in 1921, they stopped fucking around. So multiple times, like private firms, like these private capitalist filmmaking firms, they would announce like, "Oh, we're doing huge projects. We're gonna do Crime and Punishment. We're gonna adapt the Brothers Karamazov," and then they would shoot a couple of scenes. Then they'd be like, "Hey, we need some more film. We're out of film. We're gonna show this to people," even though like records later showed they had a shitload of film. Right. They were just trying to rob the Socialist Federation. And then they'd be like,
"You can't take half measures."
Right, and then they were like, "All right, we're gonna go to the south for location shots to the beach."
They're gonna yeet their way across the border.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And so in August of 1921, they're like, "Fuck this." The state, and they're like, "Okay." And what it says is their edict: the entire photographic and cinematographic trade and industry, their organization, as well as the supply and distribution of technical means and materials appertaining to them throughout the territory of the RSFSR shall be placed within the province of the People's Commissariat of Education.
Whoa. Bryce reacts only.
No, and so Lenin signed that. They were like, "Fuck this, we're nationalizing all of this shit," and so they did. And so then pretty quickly afterwards, the Civil War ends, and so once that happens, they create a state film school, and then April 1921, the Commissar of Nationalities, a little guy named Joseph Stalin, proposes a program of increased cultural. He proposes a program of increased cultural autonomy of the non-Russian republics, and he wants to set up national film studios in all of the the smaller republics.
But Ethan, I heard that that Stalin was a Russian chauvinist, even though he's Georgian.
Georgia was the first one to have one of these national film studios. Yeah, it's dumb. My man was like way Georgian.
Yeah, well, he also was like, he handled the national question pretty fucking well.
Better than anybody else. Any other leader of the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then,
Justin just did a mic drop.
Just knock the mic over. So then later in 1921, you get this little thing called the New Economic Policy.
Oh, my favorite.
Can you talk about
Bukharin's
that?
favorite also.
Can you just like summarize it real quick for someone who may not be super familiar?
It was, oh Lord, I don't want to talk about it.
We do a whole episode on this.
We do a whole episode on the NEP. So it was an attempt to build productive forces. And it was the thing which Bukharin loved. He thought that should be the standard, kind of shifting to capitalist modes of production, not temporarily, but like sort of permanently until, whatever. It was
basically like what? Yeah, state capitalism?
It was a liberalization of the economy.
Allowing private,
land ownership and ownership of production, and Lenin saw it as like regrettable but a necessary step to take.
Well, because I mean, we have to look at the context. Like, the entire area was like the Civil War was rough.
Oh yeah,
like they had pretty much nothing left.
Yeah. But Bukharin was like, "This is the way it should be," like a coward.
Like a coward.
But yeah,
Stalin had that.
Stalin was like,
ML line, and at the end of the 20s, he was like, "Fuck that."
Fuck all y'all.
So I mean that's basically what it was. But so through the NEP, the government would subsidize good films that would help build the film infrastructure, and like it led to new film magazines, like people writing and thinking about film. So basically, it led to the solvency of the film industry, brought back some technical intelligentsia. Basically, the NEP like helped them build the productive forces of the cinema industry, and it worked. So good job, Lenin and Bukharin.
Oh,
no.
That was a pity clap.
Justin was about to cheer for Lenin, and then he said Bukharin.
Well, wasn't it his idea?
he did.
Sort of, yeah.
Yeah, he did.
He was the author of the NEP. But
he
just
did.
thought
He
that
did
should
a
be the
couple
way
good
to-
things.
He did.
No, he
What?
didn't.
No, he didn't. Bukharin
He
was
wanted
garbage.
he wanted like social democracy. Is
He
what
did.
he-
No, so that's bad. But I'm saying the NEP helped them
Sure,
rebuild this.
but he wasn't
that's what I'm
doing it
talking
with
about.
the intent of trying to.
He was hoping. He was
Okay,
hoping
sure.
it would
So
save.
Lenin
definitely.
wanted to.
Yeah.
Lenin just wanted to do it for a little bit to build up the productive
Yeah.
forces,
Bukharin
but then
was
go
like,
and
"This is what we want forever."
Okay, well, yeah, fuck him for that. That's dumb. Okay, and so then 1921, you have a famine in the Soviet Union
In the Volga.
caused by Stalin. No, I'm just kidding. He wasn't even in charge at this point. No, but so what happened was the Cinema Committee. They made several films about it to like tell people in the world to raise money for like famine relief. So that was pretty. That was one of the first things that the
They
nationalized.
started comic relief that year in Britain to support. I'm fucking with you.
What?
No.
No, I didn't know what you were talking about. What is comic relief?
Real British hours, I guess. It's like a thing that was like invented in the 80s, I think, to provide famine relief for Africa.
That's a really cringy title for like.
Comic relief.
Comic relief.
Yes, it is. But they would have like comedians from all over Britain to come together, and they would be like, you know, those like telephone banks that were like fake in the back of like PBS fundraisers or whatever.
Open your hearts,
open
open your checkbooks.
Yeah, basically. But they would have British comedians like answer the phone to like take donations.
Wow,
From,
I mean,
from
like
the,
they were real big on the like the famine,
It
African
was like,
famine.
we are the world. Yeah, that's the same shit. Like that.
are the children.
Oh my
That's
god.
great.
No. I bet you
I
know.
know it's Christmas time at all.
Oh, cringe.
I bet that the
So
films
bad.
that the Soviets made about the famine would never be used against them in the future, right?
Well, yeah, we'll get there. So here I'll talk about this one guy. He'll come back in a minute. His name is Maxim Gorky. He is a writer, probably the most famous Soviet writer, novelist. Like Mayakovsky was the most famous poet. Gorky was the most famous novelist. And so he supported the revolution, but he really didn't like working class people. He thought they were like gross, and he has all these quotes about like, oh, they're really gross, and I don't like them, but I suppose I'll support this revolution. I don't know. He has a British accent because he's an asshole, I guess. I don't know.
Was that a British accent?
It was like some sort. No, my accents are garbage. You should know that by now. Yeah. Anyway, so Gorky, so he was like, I fucking can't stand Lenin. Like he's a dictator. He's taking too much power. So in 21, he leaves the Socialist Federation because he had tuberculosis. He's like, I gotta get out of here. I'm gonna go deal with this
I'm
shit.
gonna go to Colorado.
That'd be wild. That'd be wild.
He didn't. But
No, I mean,
But that's where everybody
probably a
with
lot of people. I mean,
tuberculosis
probably a lot
came.
of Colorado Springs was like for 100 years was like the place you went when you had tuberculosis.
That's where the university is.
Yeah, that was the
old
sanatorium.
Yes.
Yeah, good stuff.
Yeah.
We could do a whole episode.
We could do a whole episode on the.
It's not really
Fragmore
connected to
Sanatorium.
to
zero
leftism,
leftist.
but anyway, but so Gorky, he came back in the early 30s when Stalin invited him back. They were like, hey, Stalin was like, hey man, do you want to come back to the Soviet Union? Lenin's dead, and he was like, yeah, okay.
He was like, yeah, because you're not a dictator.
Wait. No.
No, but and then we'll talk about this in a minute, but he was one of the primary forces for socialist realism. Yeah, so end of the Civil War. So Lenin, we're still in end of 1921. Lenin was really concerned with like the propaganda use of films, and he wanted to make sure there were enough educational films and not just like mindless entertainment shit that was most of films at this point. It was just like, because people were still like, there's a person moving in the screen, like, as opposed to
With that voice, exactly.
Accents.
like like people, like, it was still a thing, like, oh, I'm gonna go watch a guy like clown around, and I'm gonna like watch a train come at me, and it's gonna be wild.
Come at me, train.
Yeah, but so Lenin's like, we can use this shit to teach people so much, like, we gotta get on this. And so he's really concerned about newsreels at this point. Like, he's like, we're doing all this cool stuff. We need to be making tons of newsreels, showing people what we're doing, like educating. That's how we're going to reach everybody in this entire fucking country, which is enormous. And he's really proposing this idea of cinification of the countryside. He's like, we need to build cinemas. We need to build movie theaters everywhere so that people can watch our shit. Yeah, so this is all happening through the NEP, and they're trying to subsidize films, like build the cinematic productive forces. Yeah, and it worked, I guess, because the number of full-length films made in Russia during the NEP went from, in 1921 they made 11 full-length movies, and then in 1924 they made 157.
Ooh, shit.
So
that's efficiency.
Soviet efficiency. It's the film factory.
Real Stalin numbers.
Well, not yet.
That is like
wait
Stalin
till you
numbers,
get
yeah.
there. So then in 1924, Goskino is reorganized into Sovkino. Because Goskino was an acronym for, like, I don't remember, but Sovkino was like Soviet Kino. And I should have said this early on. Kino, sorry, I thought I said this earlier and I didn't. Kino is the Russian word for film. So I'll say the word Kino like 200 times in the next half hour, because the next guy I'm going to talk about is Dziga Vertov, who is he edited a lot of newsreels, but then he became one of the premier filmmakers of the 20s. He really hated narrative. Like, he hated film narratives. He felt like dramatic fiction was an opium of the people. He said, Kino drama is an opium for the people. Kino drama and religion are deadly weapons in the hands of the capitalists.
Big if true.
He says the scenario. At this point, like, they use the word scenario to refer to, like, script, like a screenplay. He's like, the scenario is a tale thought up for us by literary people. Down with the bourgeoisie tale scenario. Hurrah for life as it is.
Damn.
Like, he's really into
That's like
documentary.
socialist realism to the extreme.
Yeah, exactly. But so Vertov is fascinating because he basically was one of the big, he was the pioneers of, like, he pioneered slow motion in film, like freeze frames,
Damn.
stop motion. He made the first Soviet animated film.
What?
He was a pioneer of split screen, double exposure.
Hold up.
I'm not saying he invented these things, but he was the first one to, like, figure out how to make them good.
So if he hated narrative, how did he, like, incorporate this shit into, like,
Well, so his most famous movie is called Man with a Movie Camera.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Which is in 1929, it's not narrative. It's like a documentary.
Sort of, yeah. It's kind of.
He's just it doesn't have any titles, though. It's just kind of showing life in...
Ethan judged me really hard when I used the word "just" to describe this. I was like, it's
Like,
just a like a montage of different, like, scenes of Soviet life, and he was like, just, and I was like, you know what I mean, you asshole. It's without narrative. It is only
it lacks narrative.
Yeah.
That's true. Sorry.
Ethan gets like
Ethan's passionate about that shit.
passionate about, like.
Listen, I don't know much, but I know a bit about art.
I love you.
I know I love art. No, but so Vertov's other big thing was it was called Kino Pravda, which is Russian for film truth.
Film truth.
And so these were basically these film journals. It was by him, his wife Elizaveta Svilova, and his brother Mikhail Kaufman. They were basically newsreels designed to show a story about actual life, like renovation of the trolley system in Moscow, reorganization of farmers into communes, that sort of thing. They did 23 issues over 3 years. But they got progressively, like, less narrative, and by the end, people were like, "What the fuck is this? We can't even tell what you're saying here." Yeah, and then 1929, like, his most famous thing is Man with a Movie Camera, which I recommend it. It's really good.
Oh yeah, it's really interesting.
And what's really cool is that there are a bunch of different soundtracks to it. There's one that my favorite is by the Cinematic Orchestra.
Primus.
Stop.
That would be wild.
God damn it.
No.
Well, hold on. Like, I mean, when we get to Potemkin, like, there are weird soundtracks for it.
Like Soviet, like, traffic direction or whatever, like, like, just
That's the outro music. It's some sort of fucking Primus song.
No. Nope. Never.
All right. So now we got to move on to the big daddy of Soviet film, Sergei Eisenstein.
Bless.
So basically, Eisenstein was probably the most influential filmmaker of easily the first half of the 20th century. I've seen the argument that he was the most influential filmmaker of the entire 20th century, but he basically invented the idea of montage. Mm-hmm. So like when I say montage, what do you think of?
Like a sports
Team America
montage
World
or
Police.
What?
Team
I
America
haven't
World
seen
Police.
it.
Good. Count yourself blessed.
Well, no, I mean it's just like, sorry, I'm in my high school teacher. Like, what do you think of what I said? That's, sorry. No,
Stop it.
Sorry, no, that's how my didactic. That's how it works. No.
Basically, a short sequence that like gets you from point A to point B, point A to
Yeah.
point C.
Like
you
short
your way
little
past.
things all put together, right? Yeah, yeah. And so Eisenstein basically invents this. He's he defined montage as a collision of independent shots, sequential evidence or elements perceived not like next to each other, but on top of each other. Not showing them together, but like you see this and then you see this thing, and then like the relation between the two things
Creates a mood.
Exactly. He's basically doing dialectical materialism in film. No, exactly. No,
But
because
but the reason that this happens is that during the crisis of like having not enough film to make movies, Eisenstein and a few other people are involved in this like Soviet film production company, whatever. It's not really company, but whatever organization.
Sovkino.
Yeah. Where they can't make movies because they don't have film.
Right.
So instead, they take existing films from all over the world, and they watch them, and then they go, okay, why did this particular scene elicit this response? And then they chop the film up. The existing movies, they chop into pieces, and then they reorder them. They slow them down. They speed them up to see how that changes the impact of the scene. And so they do this for a few years, right? Like they do this for a while.
Yeah, well, and so yeah, I'm glad you brought that up actually, because one of the person who invented that, we call that a compilation film. It still exists, like using previously existing footage and re-editing it to a new effect.
Yeah,
that's called a compilation film. That was invented by this woman named Esfir Shub.
Nice.
It gets like westernized as Esther Shub, but it's
yeah.
But no, she invented like compilation film. Even like film theorists of today will be like, yeah, no, she like her stuff is still like fucking sweet.
But like they had to do this because,
well, right, because
they
it was time for a lot of like a lot of research, a lot of kind of preparation, and a lot of these guys were actually working in theater to kind of practice the idea, because they didn't have very much film, like they weren't able to do a big production. But so Eisenstein's whole thing was that it's two elements that like they crash into each other and create a new thing. It's dialectics. It's like you've got your thesis, your antithesis, and it results in a synthesis. The previous idea of montage, like, which is, so there's this whole field of like Soviet montage where like these guys and these women, there were a bunch of people, they were pioneering just how we look at films, how we look at visual information. Like it sounds really obvious. Like, oh, if you show this scene and then this, like it results in this. Like we think that's really obvious, but like these people were putting that down. They were the first ones to come up with this.
They analyzed it for years.
Exactly. Like they were doing science
before they even started making movies.
Exactly. Well, and so there was this filmmaker named Kuleshov, and he has this thing which is still used to this day. It's called the Kuleshov effect. Basically, what he did was he had a short sequence of he showed this actor's face, and then he showed a bowl of soup.
Oh yeah.
And then he showed the actor's face again. And there was a coffin with a dead child in it. And then he showed the actor's face and like a woman like reclining on a sofa or whatever. And then audiences were like, oh, that was wild how that actor was able to like respond to all these things. Turns out it was the same footage of the actor's face. Like it was just an actor like look like with a blank expression, but based on the context of the film around it, people read things onto that shot.
Yeah. They projected their like what should have been the response onto his face.
Exactly. And so that was Kuleshov who came up with that. But his idea was so Eisenstein was opposed to that. He didn't think that's how it worked. Eisenstein said, so Kuleshov basically said a montage is a linkage of pieces into a chain that creates an idea, like this, then this.
Yep.
Eisenstein's whole thing was like, no, they're crashing into each other, creating a new scene. And if you watch an Eisenstein film, like, you'll see this. You may not like explicitly see that what he's doing, but if you watch it with this in mind, you'll be like, oh, okay. Because like in I'll talk about this in a minute. He's got a film called October, 10 Days That Shook the World, which is like his hour-and-a-half long adaptation of like the October Revolution. And so he's got like one of the first scenes is there's a statue of the Tsar. And then one of the next scenes is there's a bunch of people, like the seething crowds, and then like going up to the statue, and then like the statue comes down, they're pulling it down, and like people climbing up onto it. So you've got the thesis, antithesis, and then like it results in the synthesis of like people overthrow. Yeah, and he just does this over and over and over again. And so an example of this is one of his first films was called Strike, and it was an adaptation of like a story of us like in the early 1900s, like a factory strike that got put down. And so what he's doing is he's intercutting. He's got workers being gunned down by the Tsar's army, and then the footage is intercut with footage of cows being slaughtered. And so he's making this statement about like the violence being done on these workers, and like in me describing it, like you have to look, like all this shit's on YouTube, and me describing it doesn't sound super interesting, but like that's because we're almost 100 years out from this, and it's so ingrained in cinema, TV, advertising. Like it's so deeply ingrained in our consciousness. But these people, like Eisenstein was one of the first to figure this shit out.
Yeah.
It's funny. Eisenstein, like at one point, he wanted to make a film of Capital, like Karl Marx's Capital.
Yeah. Holy shit.
He had
It's
like
a lot of Lenin and
yeah, exactly. Like yeah.
Lenin, not
Lenin.
yards of Lenin.
Well, Lenin would probably be in it as well.
Lenin, not Lenin.
5 yards of Lenin
10
equals
yards.
10 yards
10
of
yards
Lenin
of
equals
Lenin,
one
yeah.
code. Sorry.
10 yards of Lenin, 10 yards of Lenin.
Trying to break
10
these
yards
down,
of
but the
Lenin
longest-
equals Lenin wearing a coat.
I want 10 yards of Lenin. It's a
Holy
tall
hell.
boy.
Tall boy.
No, but
Stop.
Eisenstein, he has this great quote. He said, "The revolution gave me the most precious thing in life. It made an artist out of me. If it had not been for the revolution, I would have never broken the tradition handed down from father to son of becoming an engineer. The revolution introduced me to art, and art in its own turn brought me to the revolution."
Wow.
No one's paying attention.
We'll pay attention
No, it's
later.
okay. No, that was a mic drop moment. That was a wah wah moment. No.
I was commenting
can you
the
edit
fact
in the
that
wah wah?
Alex has drank as many La Croix as I have beers.
Turnt on
Stay
La Croix.
hydrated. Each
Hydrate or
low
nitrate.
hours.
La Croix, it's like homeopathic soda.
You don't, you know.
I love it. I have like my fridge is full of that shit. I love it. Okay, so 1925, Battleship Potemkin. This is the first film that was assigned to
good.
everybody.
So good. Assigned viewing.
Yeah, this is everyone's homework. And it's about a 1905 mutiny of Potemkin, which is a battleship in the Tsar's Navy. Basically, what it's about is these sailors take over the ship and they sail into Odessa, and they talk to they radicalize all the citizens of Odessa, and they're like, yeah, we're gonna like fuck the Tsar, and they run this thing, and then the Tsar's people come in and mow down everybody on Odessa. But then it eventually, like, it ends on a hopeful note of the sailors like raising the red flag over Potemkin.
It's like a darker gray flag.
No, it's not. If you know this, if you watched it,
I'm just kidding.
they colored onto the film
Yeah,
stock.
they did.
It's like a cartoon flag, which is kind of it's weird, but it's jarring. But it's really good because it's the only bit of color in the whole thing is just the red flag, and it's just like, damn, that's great.
The whole, like, that whole film is so incredible. Like the things that Eisenstein does. It's Eisenstein.
Fuck off.
that he does visually in that film are just well ahead of his years. I mean, the fixed camera of Western cinema gets like thrown out. He does like this thing where like he turns the camera to symbolize a worker like It's one of the sailors, or is it one of
Does
the
he get knocked
factory
off
workers?
or like fall? What are you talking about?
I think he gets
Which scene?
doesn't he get like hit by his?
Oh, yeah.
And then he
And
like
then he
falls
falls over
but
and the camera,
but the
like-
camera rotates
Yeah.
to like symbolize the action of the falling. And
No,
that's-
it's wild.
it's totally like way above and beyond anything in Western cinema.
Well, so it's like there's like 4 sections, and the first one's
Yeah.
like the actual,
Yeah.
or the first one's not the actual mutiny, it's just the conditions on the boat, and like they've got maggot infested meat,
Yeah.
and they're like, the sailors are like, this like fucking sucks, like why are we dealing with this? And the second one is like they try to so they're the people who didn't, like the sailors who didn't want to eat the meat are going to get executed, but then like one of the so some of the sailors have the guns and they're going to execute them, but then one of the sailors is like, brothers, who are you shooting?
Yeah.
And they're like, oh no, and then they don't, and then they mutiny, they defeat the officers, like and then
of course, there's like the Odessa steps, or like the,
well,
the
and
most
so that's what I was
famous
getting to
scene,
is the scene when the Tsar's army gets to Odessa to put this down, like literally some of the most affecting film I've ever seen. Like, even, I mean, I grew up on like big like movies with sound and shit.
Yeah.
Just the cinematography and it's graphic. Like it's some of the most violent. Like it's very
getting,
violent.
like,
There's
stepped on their
blood.
hands
Like
and
kids
whatever,
getting
children,
like stepped on. People falling down these steps.
There's
And
the baby carriage. That's
yeah,
like rolling down,
it's no. I mean, if you watch this, you'll be like, holy shit! I understand where all of film canon comes from.
Yeah.
Like it's wild. Yeah, and so it's interesting. So Sovkino's president, after this movie comes out, the Sovkino's president, Konstantin Svedjikov, he didn't want to release Potemkin internationally because he didn't like Eisenstein. Probably, I think he didn't like him because he was a Jew.
Yikes!
Because Eisenstein was a Jew. But so there's this like great story of this one filmmaker. He went with Mayakovsky. They went into Svedjikov's office, and Mayakovsky. So I'll just read the quote. Mayakovsky took the floor first. He talked as usual in a thunderous voice, pounding the table with his fists, rapping on the floor with his cane he always carried. He demanded that Svedjikov immediately export Potemkin and told him he would go down in history as a villain if he did not.
Damn.
Several times Svedjikov tried to get a word in, but in vain. Nobody could ever say anything when Mayakovsky spoke. The climax of his speech was rather dramatic. Having finished, he turned to go. "Are you done?" Svedjikov said. "If you are, I would like to say a few words myself." Mayakov paused in the doorway and replied with great dignity, "I'm not through yet, and I won't be through for at least 500 years. Svedjikovs come and go, but art remains. Remember that." And he storms out. And basically, they released Potemkin internationally. Huge hit. And it's still to this day considered to be one of the greatest films of all time, with good reason, I think. It was banned in the UK until the 50s, and then even after the 50s, it was rated X until the 70s,
hell?
like 1978. It was banned in France. It was banned in Germany.
Press? What about that free market?
Well,
What
here's
about
the thing, like,
marketplace of ideas.
You watch it and you're like, holy shit, no wonder this was banned. Like it is a revolutionary like film.
Yeah.
You're just like, holy shit, like he's putting into film like this stark visual example of
Yeah, I mean that's the thing that struck a chord with me was the revolutionary fervor of the film itself.
Yes,
Which seemed very like, shocking, I guess, in that sort of a thing would be portrayed in any nation really, but certainly any nation that might be on a precarious footing, as the Soviet Union was in 1927 when they started their collectivization efforts, when Trotsky's battling Stalin in the Central Committee. Like, all of those things are the things that really struck home with me. I mean, there were other things, but it's a silent film, which is like,
yeah, I mean, it's a silent film, which is kind of weird, but it moves quick and a lot happens. Oh, I recommend it. If you've never seen it, I recommend it. And there are a bunch of different soundtracks. Eisenstein actually wanted someone to write a new soundtrack every 20 years so it would be relevant. Nice. I think the one I listened to was by Shostakovich, but it's good. But then in 1933 there was a mutiny on this Dutch ship in Indonesia called the Ziva Provinciën. They mutinied and they said, we did this because we watched fucking Battleship Potemkin and and that's us. This shit sucks. And so they mutinied and they directly cited this film as an inspiration. Basically what happened with that was the Dutch army dropped a bomb on the boat, killed 23 of the sailors, and the rest surrendered. And this incident,
What year was this?
1933. The Dutch army.
Liberal government.
Well, so what
No,
it prompted a hard right shift in the Dutch government, because they were like, there's communists everywhere,
Oh,
and so what they did was they rooted out social democratic forces and government workers and the military,
Yikes.
all this stuff. Anyway, in 1942, a Japanese bomb sank the ship. So, fuck off, Dutch Navy.
Get out and vote.
I love you say that every time. No, it's in the news. It's relevant. No, but so here's the thing. I mean, so the fact that it actually caused a mutiny, like, no wonder it was banned. But anytime you read about Battleship Potemkin, they're gonna say, "Oh, it's like the most famous propaganda film of all time. It's actually good for a propaganda film. Propaganda." Like they'll say propaganda all the time. And like, here's the thing on propaganda. So when people say propaganda, what they're talking about is it's not objective. They're trying to get across a political.
Everything is propaganda.
Well, and that's the thing. There's no such thing as objectivity,
Yeah.
and that's ideology.
Pure ideology.
Pure ideology. Nice. Zizek emoji. Yikes. He's really gross.
Bryce reacts.
He's really gross, actually. So,
Yeah.
but
Yikes.
Take it back.
Only.
Take it back.
no, but so here's the thing. So there's a book I recommend. I'll have Justin put this in the show notes. There's a book I recommend called Ways of Seeing by John Berger, and he's an art critic, art historian he was writing in the 70s. It's a really short book because it was originally a BBC film series, but like he's straight up putting out Marxist materialist art criticism, and they made a book of it. And so he's talking about art and painting specifically, but the ideas are relevant. It's this idea that anytime we're looking at something, it is socially created. It is the entire goal of, like, nothing is created in a context. We're all just soaked in ideology, even if it's not intentional. Like, all of this is every piece of media, every film, every second of TV, every ad you watch on fucking YouTube, every YouTube video, everything you read, everything has an ideology. And even if people are like, "Oh, I'm not really talking about politics here," what they're making that media in the context of a probably capitalist.
Right.
Like the basic assumptions are that this is
Whatever the dominant ideology
exactly
is,
like
very
this is
invisible.
Exactly.
Very invisible.
Like whatever, no matter what it is, the unsaid assumption is that like this is the way like the world is, and this is okay and good.
Yeah, and therefore it's apolitical.
Exactly.
It is the dominant ideology.
So I reject the claim that Potemkin is propaganda.
Same.
Well, or in a certain way, it's not propaganda because everything's propaganda.
Right.
I reject the claim that it should be singled out as propaganda because there is nothing that is apolitical. Nothing is.
It's public relations.
Oh man,
Edward Bernays. Yeah, he
Fuck that
was
guy.
like, he created the term public relations because he was like, propaganda is too loaded and it sounds negative, so he invented the term public relations, which is it's just propaganda. That's all it is.
Well,
It's
and the
just
thing is that
it's a nice way of saying
propaganda used to not be a
Yeah,
loaded term.
yeah.
It was a descriptive term, like, oh
Yeah.
it's propaganda. But now you say the word propaganda and it automatically has negative connotations. But yeah, that's why they changed it to
public relations.
public relations. Or I mean, yeah, fucking advertising is propaganda for specific capitalist interests.
Yep.
Everything is propaganda for something, and
Yeah.
that's the main thing that I want to take away here.
Like you
Or
make
that I want.
make a movie about Chris Kyle and you think that's not propaganda.
Holy shit.
Like, or,
No, I mean, like, that's
not
an
even
easy
that. Like,
example.
You look at the fucking Transformers series where like every hero is a fucking U.S. Marine, and you want to pretend that's not propaganda.
Yeah, I mean that's no propaganda, except that the Department of Defense was on set every
Yes.
day, gave millions of dollars
Yeah.
for its production.
Right. I mean, there's a whole thing where you get automatically, whether you make the film about the military or not, you get a certain amount of money as long as the CIA and the State Department get to review your film and say there are no anti-State Department or anti-CIA
Yep.
elements in
Yep.
this film. Here's a check for the fucking money. And so Hollywood studios will specifically avoid criticisms of the CIA or of the U.S. military or of the State Department
order to get
specifically
that
so they can
paycheck?
get that paycheck.
Yeah.
And they get it automatically.
Can we get that paycheck?
And in addition to that,
CIA donate to our Patreon.
in addition to that, if they portray it in a positive light, they will also get like accurate weapons. They will get an on-site like military advisor who will guide them on making sure that they portray things in a realistic light. And you want fuck off, y'all. Like everything is propaganda. Everything is propaganda.
Exactly.
Particularly U.S. cinema.
I mean, well, yeah, and so we give examples of like Transformers and stuff, which has military stuff. But even you name just a generic like rom-com that has nothing.
Yeah.
They're in a capitalist society. Like I'm guessing one of the protagonists is like works in advertising or
Right,
like is an
right.
executive somewhere. Like they're existing.
They love that shit.
Exactly. Like that. It's everywhere, and even in our society, like that we live in.
We live in a society.
I was going for it.
Exactly, like with Transformers, I am to believe that Shia LaBeouf and like Megan Fox are to be like incel Shia LaBeouf
It's so Shia LaBeouf. And he is
deserves
for real.
to be breathing the same air as Megan Fox.
Queen.
Yes.
No, but like, yeah, no. The thing with it's ridiculous and it's really frustrating. So after Potemkin, the next big film is called Mother, 1926, directed by
Mother.
Mama. All right, yeah. So it was
That was a Danzig thing. But
who is that?
don't worry about
No,
it.
I'm just kidding. I know who Dancing is. Trying to make you feel old.
You're the one who just did Queen.
Oh.
Everyone, okay. My high school students know who Queen is. They know that song. It is the white anthem, and it will always be.
No, it's
Yeah.
Wagon Wheel by Darius Rucker.
What the hell is that? Oh, outro for the show.
Yeah.
No,
No.
stop.
It's not even by Darius Rucker.
Okay. So the next big film was Mother, directed by Vsevolod Pedovkin.
That
He
was terrible.
Yeah, I know. He was an engineer.
We're bad at this. We
We
need to
are.
learn Russian. We all
We
need
should.
to learn Russian just
He
to
was
pronounce these
I'm
goddamn names.
learning Chinese. Y'all can learn.
No shit. Real shit.
All right. So he was an engineering student, and then in World War One, he was drafted into the war, and he got captured by the Germans, and so he went through some shit. But when he got back, he became an actor and a director. So this movie's about a woman whose son gets imprisoned during a strike, and like her husband is a cop, so like she's torn, you know. But she joins the revolutionaries, and on May Day they march on the prison to free all the soldiers. So the Tsar's troops kill all the revolutionaries, including the mother and her son. So the studio, they hired 200 paid extras to be in the film, and the assistant director was like, I don't think that's enough people. So he went to all the factories in the town they were filming, and he explained the film and its revolutionary message. Day of shooting, 700 workers show up to be extras.
What?
Because they're like, wow, this sounds like a great revolutionary message, and they just show up, and so then you have this enormous crowd in the
What year was this?
1926. Yeah, it's before your boy.
No, it's not.
Wait, when did he become?
23.
Oh, I guess that's true. It's like right when he started. All right, so then the next big one is October. We mentioned this a second. This is from Eisenstein. And it's a story of the October Revolution. It was so well researched. Like they did so much research for years and years and years to make this good because it was going to be released in 1927 on the 10-year anniversary of the revolution. And so they were researching. There's an image from the film of Kerensky's soldiers like shooting down from a roof at protesters. That got reprinted. It may still be getting reprinted as an actual photograph from the time period because they're like, oh, this looks so legit. Like this was from the time. No, that was a staging, but they were so good at reproducing what it actually looked like that people thought it was the real thing. And so what's funny is that so they were in the film. They're filming looting the Winter Palace, image like screen grabs from the film got posted in the LA Times as evidence of continuing Bolshevik crimes. They're still like tearing everything apart over there.
Fucking shit.
Like 10 years later. Yeah, so
Freedom of the press.
yes, exactly. It was great. No, and so this is fun because the
Probably
government.
Hearst. What?
Probably Hearst.
Probably
I
Hearst.
think it actually was.
Fucking
LA Times.
It might have been. I have another. What
year was this?
1927 or 1928. No, so the government gave Eisenstein the use of the Winter Palace. They were like, yeah, you can film, you can do whatever, just go for it. And they also gave him the Aurora, which was the ship that fired the shot that signaled the assault on the Winter Palace. They were like, yeah, you can use this ship. The government gave him weapons, gave him uniforms, tanks, artillery, and they were firing actual shells.
Holy shit.
And so like, there's a fun anecdote of one of the guys. He's like, yeah, we broke a couple windows on the Winter Palace, but like I don't feel bad. I don't feel bad because like, there was another film filming at the same time, and they broke some of the like pillars on the other side because they were shelling it.
Yikes.
Which is hilarious. But there were 5,000 workers in Leningrad who volunteered to play soldiers storming the Winter Palace.
Awesome.
Yeah, they were like, "Fuck yeah, I want to get in on that."
Fuck yeah.
Yeah, and so this is a wild film. It's really cool. If you get a chance, it's like an hour and a half. If you get a chance, it's a good film. But it's interesting. So Mayakovsky, he hated the portrayal of Lenin. He was like, the quote something like, it resembles a statue of Lenin more than anything else, and he uses the word disgusting. Here's the thing: Lenin's in the film for like 45 seconds. So.
Norman Chandler owned the LA Times.
Okay, well, he sounds like a piece of shit.
He was, yeah, for sure. His dad was in charge of the Times, and in October 1st of 1910, there was a bombing of the LA Times by union workers.
Oh, man.
Deserved it.
Fuck yeah. Fuck yeah.
For sure a piece of shit.
Yeah. So, so there was so here's the thing. So Trotsky was being portrayed in the film because he had some stuff, like he did things in the October Revolution, right?
Sure.
You'll grant that?
Yeah. I mean, they got mopped up by Stalin, but yeah.
Whoa! Okay, can't even say that. So here's the thing. At this point, in 1927, Trotsky's in the middle of his anti-government campaign, right?
Anti-government. Makes him sound like a fucking like ANCAP or something.
Right? I mean, Trotsky was an
Ultimate
ANCAP.
Yeah, because he's in the middle of his campaign, and the government is like, listen, his faction, we don't want to fire anybody up. Just cut him out of that. Cut him out of the film.
What year was this?
1927.
Oh yeah, he was.
This is when he was like
crushed.
rejected. Yeah,
he was done for at that point.
Well, right, but so they were just like, we don't want anybody to like, just cut him out. Just cut him out of the movie. And there are rumors of Stalin. Rumors like this probably happened. Stalin showed up to like sit in on the editing of the movie. We don't know what was said.
He's got nothing better to do than sit in the editing of some fucking movie.
He was like,
"Give me an important movie."
He was like, "Give me an ice pick and I'll chop this Trotsky scene out."
Oh, God.
The only reason Trotsky's even a figure anymore is because of the Western media.
Yes,
so
exactly.
it doesn't fucking matter.
Yikes.
Yeah. He was already.
He would be a forgotten figure if it hadn't been for Western.
No. But so this is a kind of tough film. Like if you watch it, like it's pretty good, but like there's some weird stuff happening. Like he'll be like showing multiple scenes like over each other, like multiple, like he's double exposing his film,
Sure.
and it's kind of tough sometimes. So it wasn't super popular, and it was delayed until 1928 because there was a lot of stuff happening, and it was kind of a problem for Eisenstein. Like it was a bad look for Eisenstein. But so then the next big film was Zvenigora by Alexander Dovzhenko. He'll come back, but he's a Ukrainian director, and he's basically telling this film is a folk legend, like 1,000 years of Ukrainian history. It's really avant-garde and experimental, and it helped make Dovzhenko one of the greats of Soviet cinema. And so a lot of people are like, "This film's really boring." And so here's this quote from him, which he published. Like, this is hilarious. He's like, "Do I hear the objection that some people in the audience may not understand my film? Well, I can't help that. I cannot well appear before them at each performance and say, 'Look here, fellows, if there's anything you do not understand, it does not mean that my film is bad or unintelligible. The reason why you don't understand it is within yourself. Maybe you're simply unable to think, whereas my purpose is to prompt your thinking while you see my film. He says, if
Ethan, did you write this?
and the next part is he says, listen, if your girlfriend whispers to you that she finds it boring, don't hesitate. Get up. Take her to another movie. Because my film is a Bolshevik production.
Oh, shit. Get out of here with your elitist bullshit.
Yeah, this guy was an asshole.
Just.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Self-criticism. This guy was, he was a dick, but I just thought that was funny. Like, you know what? Yeah, go see another movie. This is like a true revolutionary film. If you don't get it, it's because it's too deep for you.
It's probably like whoever directed Sideways when I walked out of that fucking movie. I was like, terrible.
Okay, so 1928, they have Sovkino has a big conference. Krupskaya says, listen, we need to focus on educational stuff. And everyone's like, yeah, that's probably good. And people are criticizing Eisenstein because he's actually not a member of the Communist Party. So the 5-year plans, as I understand them, are they're like, okay, we've got a plan, and it's going to take 5 years. And
well done.
No, and it's saying, like, these are the things that we're going to accomplish in this 5 years. We're going to focus most of our production on these things. And this one was definitely building up a heavy industry and those sorts of things. And so the whole reason they're having this conference, one of the reasons is they're saying we need to make cinema a tool of the cultural revolution that's happening during this first 5-year plan. So then the next couple movies, you got The New Babylon in 1929. I don't remember what it's about, but it was Dmitry Shostakovich. It was his first film score. There were riots after the first first showing of this movie. I'm not sure why, but people love rioting. 100 years ago, people loved rioting about like concerts and movies.
We need a riot.
Stop it.
We need to bring that back. Like, I think that's great. Like, I'm really rowdy after this movie. Let's burn some cars. Like, that's awesome. So then you get 1929. Eisenstein is doing a film called The General Line, which is he's making a film about the collectivization of agriculture, which is happening during the first 5-year plan. So in 1929, Eisenstein does a film called The General Line, which is about the collectivization of agriculture during the first 5-year plan. And it's interesting. So it stars this woman named Martha Lopkin, who was a farm worker. He was looking for actresses, and part of their audition was, he's like, do you know how to milk a cow? Do you know how to drive a tractor? And most of the actors were like, no. He's like, all right, nope. So he found this like woman who worked on a farm and was like, you're going to be in the movie because you actually know what this is like. So it's a story about, it involves like, there's this woman who lives on the land of this kulak and is like trying to get help from him, and he's like, no, I'm hoarding my grain or something. And then like, and it's like a pro collectivization of agriculture. Anyway, so there's another filmmaker who made like a bunch of musical comedies later on. He's got this story he was helping Eisenstein edit. And he's like, one day Eisenstein were lecturing to the students of the film school. A guard ran into the lecture hall and said, Comrade Stalin's on the phone. He's asking for you. And so they run over the phone, and Stalin, so what they said was, forgive me for interrupting your work. I've wanted to talk with you, comrades.
I'm going to kill you if you don't give me a copy of this audio recording of this symphony.
This is them relating what it's
okay, sorry.
Forgive me for interrupting your work. I've wanted to talk with you, comrades. When would you have some free time? Would 2 o'clock tomorrow be convenient? The idea that we, young Soviet filmmakers, were to see the great leader of the people, to talk with him personally, filled us with excitement and joy. Next day, promptly at 2 p.m., we were admitted to Comrade Stalin's office, where we also found Comrades Molotov and Voroshilov. We were greeted warmly and kindly.
Low-energy Voroshilov.
Gross. We were greeted warmly and kindly, and unconstrained...
Nobody.
So, all right. So, with...
Steamroll right through that.
So, all right. With great sensitivity, this is their quote. With great sensitivity, Yosef Vissarionovich gave us his critical comments on The General Line. He then went on to the general question of film art. This is what Stalin says. This is what they're quoting Stalin as saying. The significance of Soviet film art is very great, and not only for us. Abroad, there are very few books with communist content, and our books are seldom known there, for they don't read Russian. But they all look at Soviet films with attention. They all understand them. You filmmakers can't imagine what responsible work is in your hands. Take serious note of every act, every word of your heroes. And so he was like, so basically the point of this is that he was saying that the filmmakers didn't know enough about Marxism, and he was like, all right, listen, your finale, like, it's garbage. What you got to do for the finale of your movie
Is put me in it.
no, he said, listen, I'm gonna pay for you guys to go travel through the entire Soviet Union. You're gonna go like visit all the villages, talk to all the people. When you get back, you write a new ending for this movie. And so they get back, and I haven't seen the movie.
They didn't, and he killed them.
No.
Okay.
All right. So has anyone ever seen a movie with sound in it?
No, not yet.
Never.
No. So the next great change in Soviet film history, and like I guess world film history, is
Talkies.
Yep, basically. And so here's the thing. So sound films, they weren't like, this is going to be big, this is going to be huge. What it was that Warner Brothers in 1925, they were going under. They're like,
Our sponsor.
yeah, exactly. Our
Glorious
sponsor,
sponsor.
Warner Brothers. They were like, no one's liking our movies. We got to try something new. And they were like, well, we got this sound shit. And they're like, throw it in. And so they made these sound movies, and then people were actually like, this is amazing. Yeah, so like film was like a novelty. They were just like, oh, let's just try it. Maybe it'll make us some money. It turns out it's the future. And so yeah, so then,
bills, y'all.
so in 19
Dumb.
so in 1929, they built the first sound facilities in
Theater?
yeah. So the first sound movie is a Plan for Great Works, which is a compilation documentary about the 5-year plan. It has some music and some sound effects, but there's only 2 theaters in the entire Soviet Union that can show it, and they're in Moscow and Leningrad. But then by 1936, 100% of films in production were sound. This talky shit, it's over. We're done with it. 1930, Soviet film industry reorganizes. So they reorganize the Soviet film industry into Soyuz Kino, and you've got this guy who's in charge named Boris Shumatsky, who doesn't really give a shit about artists. He's just like, I don't really care about art. This is an industry. It's a business. So then 1931, the next big thing is Film Train. Similar to the Agit trains, but they're like, choo-choo! Basically. So it's
Agitate.
propaganda. Agitation. Yeah, okay. So it's a self-contained film studio on rails. It's got an animation lab to make cartoons. It's got film printing machinery, developing equipment. And so basically what they would do is they would travel around the Soviet Union, find out what people's problems were, and make instructional films about them, like winterizing factory equipment and things like that. And then they would make critical films on local conditions. Like you go to a place and they're like, oh, wow, you got this party member's son is in charge of things. That's bad. Let's make a movie about that. And they would show
Sounds
that.
oppressive.
Well, and they'd make films about like local like bureaucracy problems, or like, oh, these like motherfuckers. Like it was localized like short films they would make when they got to the place, and then they would show them. So then, 1933, you've got Soyuz Kino. They made it 3 years, and they were like, we got a new name. So they reorganized to the Chief Directorate of the Film and Photo Industry, which doesn't roll off the tongue as much as Soyuz Kino or Sov Kino or Ghost Kino or any of the previous ones. Yeah. Okay. So now here's we got to talk about socialist realism, because I've been doing so much research on this and I still have only like scratched the surface. Like it's a big topic. So basically, socialist realism in 1932, the Congress of Soviet Writers, they said, all right, all of our art, socialist realism now. And then the All-Union Creative Conference on Cinema Affairs was in 1935. They adopted the same principles. So socialist realism, the idea of socialist realism is that it's reality depicted in terms of its revolutionary development and its like ideological content.
Highly materialist.
Well, so the whole thing is that they want it to be clear. They want it to be openly didactic. Like it's optimistic. It's fairly simple. Like it's accessible to anybody. And so for writing, for the novels, they wanted stories about like the proletariat, like about like revolutionary literature. In painting, we're going to paint like proletarian scenes. We're going to paint scenes from like party meetings. We're going to paint Stalin a lot. We're going to paint a lot of Stalin. So much Stalin.
Good call.
But so the idea is that it's realistic in form, socialist in content. And so with painting specifically, it was a return to like classical forms of painting, like neoclassicism. Here's the thing. I think socialist realism, like, I think it's an awesome idea. I think it's really cool. I think it's a valuable, like, art movement. But I
Justin's gonna stand up and jump across the table now.
socialist realism is the only proletarian form of art. No, it's I think it's like it did stifle experimentation, like trying to innovate and trying to do new things with art. Like it kind of, you had a very specific thing that you were like, well, this is art. This is our art form. Whatever. I'll shit out a socialist realism painting. Like that's fine. But that happens with every art form. That's
under capitalism, like you end up with like a recursive loop of like, this thing sells, so I will imitate this thing, and it will continue to go. So it happens. It
happens anytime. Exactly.
By diktat.
Well,
it happens via like, especially under capitalism, it happens because the market has decided that this is what sells, and therefore we're going to continue to sell that thing to you, and so therefore like directors, painters, poets will imitate people who have already sold, so that they're able to get that out there. So it's it's not like exclusive to
no, absolutely not.
But you're right though. I would agree with you that like restricting what is acceptable in terms of like means of expression stifles creativity.
Right, exactly. So that book I mentioned earlier, Ways of Seeing by John Berger, he has a whole section on how oil painting became like the capitalist art form from the 1700s on, and it's because it was basically, the summary is that was the best way to depict like your possessions and the stuff you had, and like nice things that you could possess to show off to other people. And his suggestion as an art critic is that like 90% of oil paintings like fucking suck. Yeah. But they're still held up right next to the good ones because like, well, it looks very similar to the shit that's good, so whatever. So we put it in there and we were like, oh, oil painting, like that's good. And it may be technically good, like it looks nice, I guess, but the idea is that like there's so much stuff in there with oil painting that that can look good, that there's very little like genuinely good, creative, like powerful art. It's just a lot of stuff like people making, oh well, my patron's gonna give me however many like current units of currency we have in our in Italy right now. I don't no, like
talking about the Renaissance,
right? But that's actually where the oil painting started. Yeah. So the idea of socialist realism is instituted in 1932 and basically goes until the 80s. And I mean, like people stopped really focusing on that, but like it was the official art form of the Soviet Union until the 80s. And I don't think that's great to have like an official art form. Like I will go on record saying like I think. Listen, I like a lot of art. I think that art is. I think there's a lot
going down on the purge.
Oh, can you at least put me in like an art gulag where we can do productive labor for the revolution?
Gulag.
Thank you. Oh man, that'd be great. Okay. No, but so at this point they established socialist realism, and it's, you can't talk about art in the Soviet Union without talking about socialist realism. Stalin loved it. He was a huge fan. And so that's adopted at a conference in 1935 for cinema. All right. So then 1935, they're passing out orders of Lenin everywhere for filmmakers.
You get an order of
Lenin. Yeah, exactly.
You get an order of Lenin. Everybody gets an order of Lenin.
Yeah, they're at the Soviet Oscars, like, everyone look under your seats, there's an order of Lenin. Except for Eisenstein.
What?
So here's the thing. So Shumyatsky, who's the guy who took over the GUKF, he didn't like Eisenstein for whatever reason because he was like too artistic. He was not very good at socialist realism. So Shumyatsky's like, I'm not gonna let you make any movies. Like,
whack.
And he went to, like, Eisenstein traveled to America, like, to talk to some filmmakers and learn some stuff. He went to where did he go? He went to Mexico. He was gonna make this whole film in Mexico about the Oh gosh, don't quote me on this, but I think it was. Oh, I just said don't quote me on this, but it's getting recorded. I think it was on the Mexican Revolution, but I'm not 100% sure. But anyway, it didn't, like, for whatever reason, like, that couldn't work out. He moved back, and he hadn't made any movies in the Soviet Union for a while, so he didn't get an Order of Lenin. Everyone was like, "Oh shit, Eisenstein didn't get an Order of Lenin. Oh, this is awkward. Ooh." Yeah, and so this guy Shumatsky, his whole thing is that he's exporting a bunch of films to the rest of the world. So there's the newspaper The American, which is a Hearst newspaper, or they're quoted as saying in like an editorial, "The avowed purpose of the export of these films is the complete annihilation of the United States of America and its democratic institutions and the substitution of the dictatorship of the proletariat, the complete destruction of personal liberty, and finally, as a matter of course, the transference of the national lawmaking body from Washington to Moscow," in all caps. Woo! And then they say the latest propagandistic move in this attempt of Russia to conquer America is the field of the motion picture.
Oh God.
Are you now, or have you ever been a member of the Communist Party?
Oh God.
Yes.
Red Scare episode 1. So under this guy Shumyatsky, production slows a lot. Like, they make so many fewer films. There's accusations of mismanagement, misuse of funds. So he's denounced in Pravda. He's removed from his post. And I can't find for sure what happened to him. He was either put in charge of some rural factory somewhere that had nothing to do with film, or he got shot.
Wow.
By
one or the other.
One or the other. Yeah, I'm not sure. I've heard, so in my research, everybody in Moscow, all the filmmakers in Moscow were like, yes, they had a party when he got removed from his from his post. But in any case, Eisenstein was allowed to make films again. So
nice. When did this happen?
That was, I want to say that was like 1930.
So Stalin did nothing wrong. No. No?
The whole socialist realism thing was Stalin's.
Stop.
Stalin's baby. I'm
Come
serious.
on.
No, I'm serious. He was really into it. That was his, like, he made... Listen, Stalin did a couple things wrong. Like, listen, I am not going to come onto Proles of the Round Table and besmirch the name of Stalin. Like, I'm not going to do that. But, like, I can criticize the man for some policies he did. Like, overall, like, he saved the world from Hitler. Like, he did good stuff. Like, but, like, he made a few missteps here because he was not... Listen, you can't expect the man to be perfect in everything, can you?
Nope.
No? Okay.
But he did like Volga Volga.
So then in 1938, there was this movie, it's only notable because Stalin loved it. It's called Volga Volga. It's a...
It's not only notable.
Well, no, it's a fun movie.
The banjo scene?
It's a fun movie. No, it's a good movie. Justin, you watched it. What's it about?
It's literally like a comedy critique of bureaucracy. Is at least how it reads to me, and it's
like a
funny,
comedy.
and
It's just like a slapstick, silly, like 30s film.
It pokes fun at Soviet life, which is funny.
Yeah, it was Stalin's favorite movie from multiple sources. He loved it, so I guess maybe he didn't like bureaucracy. So anyway, at this point they moved the GUKF, like that long acronym. It gets replaced by the Central Committee for Cinema Affairs, which was directly subject to the Council of People's Commissars. And they were like, all right, listen, you filmmakers, you're spending too much fucking money. You don't get to make any movies unless you submit a detailed budget beforehand. And so they're like, all right, we're gonna do cinema austerity. We're gonna cut. We're gonna reduce the budget, reduce the deficit, and they're gonna pay. They created a new fund to pay creative workers, engineers, and like film techs bonuses out of the budget reduction, which is nice. Also, the Central Committee wrote all the screenplays now.
Oh.
That they were just like, we're gonna assign you scripts. And so people start. I'm glad Justin's not here. People start disappearing. It becomes really hard to make films. It was this was like, when were the purges? No, there was a lot of crazy stuff happening during the purges. A lot of filmmakers disappeared. Like, it was not great. It was problematic, but it was Yashov's fault, right?
My fave is problematic.
The Soviet Union.
Although the media scene, the theater scene, the acting scene was always rife with like petty bourgeois.
No, that's true.
And so
that is very true.
So the fact that they would be targeted by purges is not shocking at all.
But there were some people who were good revolutionaries who disappeared.
Maybe,
they got
yeah.
caught up in the thing, and that sucks.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, and that sucks.
Yeah,
but
which
like,
is why Stalin later was like, "Y'all went too far."
My bad.
And then
my bad.
And then Yezhov was like,
Y'all's bad.
What?
Yezhov was executed.
Oh, he
Yeah.
wasn't like that. That was done to him.
Yeah.
So then 1938, the next big film. This one's wild. So this is from Eisenstein. It's called Alexander Nevsky. So Nevsky was like Prince Alexander. He was an early like Russian, like in the 13th century. It's a film about the defeat of the Holy Roman Empire invaders by Prince Alexander. And so at this point, like the Nazis are emerging in Germany.
The Holy Roman Empire was Germany, by the way.
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
not Germany, but before Germany.
The precursor to
became
Germany. Yeah. It was like Holy Roman Empire, Austro-Hungarian Empire, Germany, right?
Prussia was in there.
I thought that was part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire.
Prussia was.
I thought that was one of the states.
fucking,
Wait, did
I could be wrong.
Austria-Hungary exist at the
Austria-
same time as the Holy Roman Empire?
No, it was
No,
after.
no.
It was after.
Oh, I
Yeah.
was like,
It was like one,
that-
then the other, then the other. But
that doesn't sound right.
Prussia was where Germany is. They may have been part of the Austria.
I think it was. No, so it's it's like Teutonic, like the German. There's a connection between like the Germany of that time to the Holy Roman Empire. So in his film, he's depicting some of the Holy Roman Empire invaders with swastikas, which is not historical, but like it's propaganda. No, like he was trying to drum up like already trying to get support for like, hey, you know, these fucking fascists over here, like huge success. 23 million people saw this movie, like they loved him. So Eisenstein finally got his fucking Order of Lenin from this film, 1931, and then also he got for this film he got the Stalin Prize in 1941, which is a new
I
one.
want that.
They gave it out to so many people. You probably have one. You just don't know.
I
Have it in
wish.
your heart.
and so that's interesting. So during the late 30s and the 40s, like Stalin would like show up in random films for whatever reason.
Yes,
like
it's
like,
so good.
like-
Yeah, I watched. I can't even remember the film it was, but there's like whoever the hero or heroine was. At the very end, they're like standing on this airfield, and this plane, like out of nowhere,
Oh.
there's like no like prior like context for what's happening, but this plane just like flies in, lands on the airstrip, and Stalin gets out and like comes and like shakes hands and pats backs, and you're like, what the fuck was this? Like
that
super
happened.
funny,
That happened a
super funny.
bunch.
Isn't
Yeah.
that one that Zizek like critiqued? He was like Zizek,
Or whatever his name is.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, you're good. No.
Yeah, Zizek. But
Wait,
like.
Is it? Was that in one of his like
like he was
one of his film movies?
Yeah.
Is to
when he's talking about ideology, and then he
Yes.
talks about he's like
Pure ideology.
he's
Pure
like now only
ideology.
without Stalin,
Pure
they're now in
ideology.
love because they see Stalin.
Oh, that's
and they see each other.
right.
Oh,
What
Yes.
is that? What is the fucking movie called? Or both of them? They're like those are pretty. Like Zizek sucks. Like he's
He
a
does.
creep. But like those are pretty good movies.
They are pretty good. Yeah.
Okay, so we got Alexander Nevsky. He gets his Stalin Prize. So Stalin shows up in random films. And so there were two actors really who played all of Stalin in all these movies. So the first guy, his name's Mikhail Gelovany. He was a Georgian who made a career like playing Stalin. He did Stalin like the most. After Stalin died, he like they wouldn't let
The
him.
most.
Yeah, like he had the greatest number of Stalin credits. They wouldn't let him play any other roles because they were like, oh, people are gonna remember Stalin and like they'll remember him badly. You're not allowed to play Stalin anymore. And he was like, oh fuck. So he did a lot of theater stuff to continue. And it's interesting because after Khrushchev's secret speech where he denounced Stalin, a lot of Gelovany's scenes were edited out of films, or the films were just banned by Khrushchev's government. So he
Sounds
kinda-
impressive.
Yikes. And then
Liberalism is impressive.
the other guy was Alexei DK. He was an actor and theater director. He was the director of the Bolshoi Drama Theater. So during the purges, he got sent to the Gulag in 1937 because they said he was. This is before he played Stalin. They were saying he was a Japanese spy. As far as I can tell, there wasn't much evidence for this. But like, when he got out, he worked in Siberia, and then he got cast into this historical drama, and he got the Stalin Prize for his production. They were like, "This is great." And then after that, he got cast to play Stalin. So he goes to the Gulag, gets out, and then he plays Stalin. And Stalin was like, "This guy's my favorite guy to play with. He's great. He's great." Because the other guy, Gelovany, he was Georgian, and Stalin didn't love him because it sounded like as far as I can tell, he like nailed Stalin's Georgian accent like too good. Stalin's like,
He's making fun of me.
He's making fun of me. But like he still let him do a shitload of movies. But then no, DK was his favorite actor to play him. He's like, this guy, he's awesome. But like this guy was in the Gulag. Well, I just think that's a really interesting story. This guy was in the Gulag, got out, and then made his career playing Stalin in movies. Yeah, so like the late 30s, they're making tons of anti-Nazi films. But then in 1940, the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact happens, where the Soviet Union
Completely invalidates anything the Soviet Union ever did.
Well, so what happens is they're like, okay, you're not allowed to show any anti-Nazi films anymore. So they take them all out of production. So that's not
Yikes.
awesome. Because like, here's the thing, like, the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, they were trying to like not have hostilities so they could build up their forces because they knew they were going to have to fight Nazi Germany. Like, yes, we all know that.
Right.
Like, it looks bad. It's a bad look. Like they were like, yeah, no, we're not going to show any anti-Nazi stuff. Like Nazis, they're great. We love them, folks. I mean, that only lasted what, 1 year, 2 years? Yeah. And I mean, the Soviet Union was like the last country to sign everyone else had signed fucking.
Britain had already signed a pact with Germany.
Right. Yeah. No. So they started making tons of anti-fascist, anti-Nazi films, like instructional films for civilians about like what to do if you get bombed, like how to shoot guns, like all these films. So the Nazis invade the Soviet Union, and like a lot of film workers like take up arms and join the army. So like they can't make as many movies. Leningrad studios get evacuated because it gets sieged by the Nazis, famously. But then the Soviet Union drives back the Nazis, and the Nazis start retreating. And it's funny because the Nazis had a lot of cameras on the front, like, well, we're sending back newsreels, like, look, we're defeating Nazis. They start to go back, like get defeated, and then Goebbels is actually quoted saying like, we can't really show, like, we can't make any more films. It's too cold. The cameras are freezing. It's weird. The Soviet crews did not have such an issue. They were making so much fucking film that whole time. So then the next famous movie is Ivan the Terrible in 1944 by Sergei Eisenstein. It's the story of the first Tsar, a conqueror who united Russia. There was a lot of identification between him and Stalin. Like in the movie, people were like, "Wow, this is like Stalin. This is great." And so it's a two-part movie, and part two wasn't allowed to be shown because they show Ivan, like they show him as like a fallible person making bad decisions. So like you can't release this movie. So here's the thing. So
find us on Wikipedia.
No, I did a lot of research. I did a lot of research on this. Fuck you. Fuck you.
Comrade Wikipedia. I saw that.
Charlie Chaplin, the famous actor, he was quoted saying, "This is the greatest historical film of all time." Like Ivan Terrible Part 1, greatest movie ever. Stravinsky, Igor Stravinsky, the famous composer, he was like, "This movie sucks." Prokofiev, he did the soundtrack. That soundtrack sucks. So I just thought that was funny. There's one guy who says that Part 2 was banned because of how homoerotic it was.
Huh.
Which
this could be possible during the anti homosexuality.
This was the late 40s, like mid 40s.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was not great.
Possible.
Stalin did one thing wrong.
He did
a few things wrong.
A few things wrong. Yeah, I mean, we've talked about it. Like, there's been several episodes of this podcast where we've been like, well,
Stalin did a few things wrong.
Yeah, that may have not
My
been
first
the best
episode
choice.
of the Soviet space program, we were like,
the science gulags.
Yeah, science gulags.
But
Yeah, anyway.
your Wikipedia opinions on film are not valid.
You know what? I'm gonna splinter this podcast and make a different podcast.
Let's start the 14th International.
The second international podcast. No, so then, it actually eventually got released in 1958. I haven't seen it. I don't know if it's any good. The second part. So 1944, I'm sure it's good. Eisenstein was a genius. 1944, the Artistic Council of the Soviet Union. They're like, all right, listen. We're going to plan all productions that handle all questions that are not settled at lower art councils. Like every city has its own council. Like Moscow has a film studio. Leningrad has one. Like all these places. And there's this artistic council has 22 members, including Eisenstein, like all these other famous filmmakers. It also had cameramen, actors, writers, composers, including Shostakovich, and then military consultants in this council. So they were like, we're going to make all the film decisions if you guys can't figure it out at the lower levels. 1946, they replaced the, what was it now? It's the Central Committee for Cinema Affairs. They replaced that with the Ministry of Cinema. I told you they were going to change the name like 8 times. So we're almost done. So we get to the 1950s. This is like 30 years
That's
left.
a reach.
What?
That's a reach.
No, I just thought that was an interesting
Get
little
out, Stretch
anecdote.
Armstrong, because we're going to be making
Stretch
some
Armstrong.
reaches.
Amazing. Okay, so we get to the 1950s. Most of the films that they're making are about the Great Patriotic War, or World War II, as you may know it. And so after Stalin dies in 1953, RIP, some restrictions on non-socialist realism art are relaxed. So it's still the official ideology, but like they're like, yeah, you can do whatever. Like, I mean, like if it's crazy, we're not going to release it, but like you can do more. It doesn't have to be explicitly socialist realism. And they recognized, like the official government people in charge of this, they recognize, like, listen, it's important to occasionally have challenging works so the audiences don't get complacent. Like, we don't want complacent audiences. That's bad. And it's interesting. So after Stalin dies, there are very few members of the government featured in popular films. Like, you used to have a lot of party members, and like Stalin was in like hundreds of movies, but yeah, in the 50s there was a lot of focus on like grittier realism, not as many like heroic stories of patriotism and all of this. Khrushchev, in a couple of speeches, he pointed out, like, we have misused cinema to glorify Stalin. Like, we made him look
off.
And but
Is he upset that they didn't have pictures of him carrying corn?
not enough corn. Where's the corn? No, but then the 6th 5-year plan, which is 1956 through 1960, it was investment in cinema. We're going to spend a lot of infrastructure for studios and movie like theaters. In the construct, like one of Khrushchev's whole things was like, we're gonna, part of this 5-year plan is like leisure facilities. We're gonna like make a lot more like fun stuff for everybody. So then we get the 1963. The Presidium of the Soviet Union, they're like, we're gonna create a totally new cinema thing, like organ that it's never existed before. We're gonna call it Goskino, which, if you remember, was the one from like 1920, 2020. And so 1960, one of the most common things is red westerns. So they make a ton of these, and they actually make these in East Germany and a lot of the other Warsaw Pact countries behind the Iron Curtain.
So oppressive.
No, they're red westerns. There are 2 kinds where they take place in like the Wild West of America, but they have like opposite interpretations. Like there are movies where they're like pro-Native American,
Nice.
like from their perspective, like killing cowboys.
Sweet.
I need to watch these.
Full support.
Full support. Yeah.
Uncritical support.
And then there's one of, it's like Romanian settlers in the American West and like the shit that they get from the white Americans. So there's like revisionist westerns, but then there's also Osterns, which is a little pun.
Eastern.
Yeah.
Ostern.
Well, because like the German word for east.
Ost.
Ost. Yeah, so it's the Osterns. And they're set on the like the steppes, which is the like, it's like Mongolia.
Yeah.
That whole area. There's like these huge grasslands. Or in like the Asian parts of the Soviet Union, and it's like they're westerns with like the idea of an American Western with like, oh, there's this person who comes into the town to like deal with whatever issue, but like they're set in like Mongolia and Kazakhstan and those sorts of things. So Brezhnev, who's the premier at this point, he's really encouraging Russian nationalism, which is not great. And so they make this one movie called The Red Snowball Tree, which is such a bizarre series of words. It's Kalina Krasnaya. It's 1974. It praised traditionalist conservatism, shunned like the city, and like all the stuff I'm reading about it, like, oh, this is a great movie, but all the people who complain about it are like hardline Marxist Leninists.
Ooh.
And like, oh boy.
Spooky.
Well, and and so one of the reasons that
No Sternerism in my podcast.
no egos allowed.
No.
No, but so one source I read, they were suggesting the reason it got released was because Brezhnev himself really liked it. He's like, "Yo, let's release this. It's really like I love Russia. Like Russia's great." So yeah, and then another big trend in the 70s is Zhensky filmy. It's about films about women specifically and like their problems and their relationships and everything. These were really popular. Some of the greatest box office successes in the USSR during the 70s were Zhensky filmy. And so one example of this is the film Moscow Doesn't Believe in Tears, which was released in 1979.
It's a beautiful movie.
Which was another one that was
So
part
good.
of the assigned reading. Yeah, what'd y'all think?
It was really like genuinely fucking funny.
Yeah.
Like hilarious. Like multiple times I was like laughing out loud at that movie.
Yeah, it was cool the way they portrayed the characters in the movie. And something I'll bring up
Well,
is...
so the film. Let me just. So the film is
Ooh.
about these three women.
Wow.
These
Sorry,
three,
you haven't been talking for 90% of these fucking podcasts.
No one's been interjecting. I'm trying to say
He's
what the movie's
interjecting
about.
now.
I'm trying to say what the movie's about, so that people who aren't going to watch this
All
fucking
right,
movie.
all right.
No,
Set up
so
the
the
narrative.
movie,
Set
yeah,
up
the
the
movie's about these three women who move to Moscow to kind of like make it big or whatever, and they end up
Pull
working,
themselves up by the bootstraps.
Yeah, basically, and they end up working. Yeah, they're all working in a factory, staying at a workers' hostel, and then like two of them get married. One of them, she ends up getting pregnant from like her boyfriend, and then who's gross and sucks. But then, and then the second half of the movie is 20 years later, like following them. Like the one woman, she's still married and has a bunch of kids. Like the one woman separated from her husband, who's like a drunk, and then the woman who got pregnant, like she's got, her daughter's like 20 years old, but then she's also the in charge of the factory that she was working at. And so it's just about like these women trying to make it as professional women in Moscow in the Soviet Union in the 70s. Yeah, so I mean that's the context of the film.
What I was going to say was that one of the things that I've noticed with the four Soviet films that I've seen is that the emphasis seems to be on in the individual story, like the individual lives, their work, their interactions, their dreams, their hopes, and in a society in which in the West we paint it as very black and white, like they're all just mindless drones, like just worker drones, like moving forward. The emphasis, like I said, that's placed on the individual kind of shatters that narrative of like
and
the
that's
Soviet
the thing.
Union.
Like in Western films, there's usually a great man,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And it's usually a man who is the hero of the film, and they're the only one we give a shit about. Everyone else is there to build up this one individual. That's the reason that the whole like Bechdel test was developed, where it's like, you know, are there women in this movie?
Are there two women who talk about something?
Yeah, is there a woman? Are there two women? Do the two women talk to each other? Do the two women discuss anything other than the main struggle of the dude who is the main character? Mm-hmm. And it's like none of that was true. Because what you're doing there is framing the general narrative of Western cinema, which is most of the time there's not a woman in it. If there is a woman main character, there is not another one. If there is another one, they don't talk to each other. If they do talk to each other, it's about the struggle of the main dude character, right? And that's not the way that these films are.
No.
Especially in Moscow Doesn't Believe in Tears,
Really
the
all
main
of them.
characters are women, right?
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
they discuss their own feelings and their own struggles. They are the hero or heroines, I suppose, of the film. And also, I think too the overt criticism of Soviet, like the structure of Soviet society, right? Like in Moscow Doesn't Believe in Tears, the film director is portrayed as like flaky and like, you know, obsessed with image or whatever. And the boss of the factory is portrayed as like not knowing what the fuck is going on or whatever. So
And
the
the
idea
same is true of Volga Volga, and in some ways the same is true of Solaris.
Yeah.
And of the critique of their own civilization
Yes.
is very apparent, and that's
Yeah.
why I think like this idea of like this black and white thing, like
Monolithic.
Wikipedia version of the Soviet Union that Ethan tried to portray.
Man, fuck off.
But no, for real. So because we can't get caught up on this because nobody else has seen these films, or a majority.
You
of
should
people
though.
haven't. Yeah,
Like
you
they're
should
on
watch these. You
YouTube
should
for
watch these.
free.
Watch
They're
them.
good.
But as far as
They're
people
good.
listening to this, they probably haven't already watched them. So the movie is great. It is a great critique. It's very like pro worker, pro woman, and then it just has this weird deterioration at the end.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah,
know
yeah.
what the fuck is happening.
The ending
'Cause
was- the
'cause
ending was
it's like for like
weird.
2 hours of the film, it's like very liberatory.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
it's like men are terrible
Yes.
and
Yeah.
like and it's
And then all
focusing
of a
on these
sudden,
women.
in like the last 15 minutes of the movie, it just like deteriorates into this weird narrative.
yeah, well, because like
even
the
Moscow doesn't believe in tears. There's like this main
like the
dude character who's sort of like charming and nice or whatever, but he's also like, I wouldn't be married to a woman who makes more money than me.
And they
But don't
never
worry,
critique that.
I make more money than her.
Right,
and then it
then,
turns
like,
out she
the
does
third
make
act,
more money.
or like the
Yeah.
third act problem is that like he finds out like
Yeah.
oh she does make more money and he's like oh I'm upset about
I'm
this.
out of here. Yeah.
Right, and then like he comes back, but they never say anything
Yeah.
about him being a misogynist dick
Yeah,
about
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah.
So that was really frustrating to
Yeah.
me.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean
Yeah,
like
whatever.
Misogyny is real.
I mean,
and it happens.
yeah,
in the
and it
Soviet
was and there was a lot of like social conservatism in the Soviet Union. Like
Yeah.
obviously that's the case. I'm not gonna like wash over that. It's a good thing we can extrapolate about the entire Soviet society from
Oh
this
yeah,
film.
from one movie. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, but like those things did exist.
Oh, but it got
and-
way worse after the collapse of the Soviet Union,
oh,
and it was way worse before
Oh,
the
God.
Soviet Union.
yeah, no, I mean it was horrific. But like, yeah, I'm not gonna say that like it was super progressive and great. Like
Sure.
like there were issues for sure, and like these films. While Moscow doesn't believe in tears, like for most of it I was like, oh wow, this is like focus on women
Yes.
and like talking about like their struggles,
Yeah.
and like that was awesome. And then the like literally the last 15
The- yeah,
minutes,
the-
like
the
literally
fourth
like
act.
it goes
Yeah.
so quickly. I was like, holy shit! And it just
Yeah.
the guy comes back, and I was like, why
Sad.
you're not
Why?
gonna say anything about why
About
that
how
happened?
shitty he was.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He doesn't apologize.
Yeah,
He's
yeah.
not like, you
Yeah,
know what,
he
I
just
was
shows
wrong.
up. Yeah, exactly. He's just like, all right, I'm back.
He's like, I'm gonna,
Yeah, it was
whatever.
dumb.
I'm gonna swallow my misogyny.
But anyway, just at least watch the first 2 hours because it really was a good film.
It was so good. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it
Super
was
funny.
yeah, it was a fun.
And also, you're talking about this was like 1970s.
1979.
Yeah, so like compare that to any Western film. of
Sure,
the same-
sure.
Yeah.
Which
Yeah,
doesn't
yeah.
make it hold up to a much higher standard.
Yeah, it doesn't make it okay, but
Yeah.
it's
Yeah, but like yeah, exactly. So so that was released in 1979. It actually won the Academy Award for
foreign
best
film,
foreign film in 1980. But the director of the Soviet Union wouldn't actually let him go to the ceremony to accept the award, which kind of sucks. But
it's fine. You don't need that bourgeois like reinforcement of your
Yeah.
abilities.
But so the thing with Moscow Doesn't Believe in Tears, like they didn't advertise it very well because they're like, whatever, I don't, it's a film, whatever. But then like people loved it. Like everybody in the Soviet Union, they're like, this is amazing. We love this film. It was hugely well received by all walks of life. Like workers loved it. Like the labor aristocracy loved it. Like everybody loved this movie. And then Boris Gryazov, he was the party secretary in Moscow. He said this film is permeated with our Soviet communist spirit. After it came out, so like
I mean, it feels like it was.
Yeah.
I mean,
it felt like a very Soviet movie. I don't
Yeah,
know. No, I liked it a lot.
As people who grew up in the Soviet Union,
exactly, yeah. I was like, yes, this reflects my experience.
I've experienced
I've
all
read,
this.
I've read Wikipedia articles on the Soviet Union.
damn it.
No, you don't read the Wikipedia articles. You go and click at the little numbers that they have the sources.
And then you pretend like you read them.
No, I read all of them, but
You did.
But I filtered out all of the anti-Marxist, anti-Soviet propaganda. So then, the next big movie was War and Peace, which was released in 1966 and 1977 because it was 4 parts. It's 2 hours apiece. So it's like 8 hours total. It was the most expensive Soviet film, and at that point, one of the most expensive films in the world up to that date. Everybody really liked it. It won the Academy Award in 1969, so it was a little earlier. But I haven't seen it because I haven't sat
So you
down
don't
for
have
8 hours.
to watch it.
Listen, I tried to read War and Peace.
Who are
once.
you
I
even?
got halfway through like the book of War
Coward.
and Peace. Yeah, no, I know. Self-criticism for not watching the movies I'm talking about. But then, the last major guy I want to talk about is Andrei Tarkovsky. He's a Soviet filmmaker. He's maybe one of the most famous. His first movie was Ivan's Childhood in 1962. It was about a kid who got orphaned in World War II. It was internationally acclaimed. His next one was Andrei Rublev, which was 1966. It was about a 15th century icon painter, like for the Orthodox Church. It was a portrait of medieval Russia and the historical significance of artists. He had to cut a lot before they would let him release it. He had to cut a lot out of it because it was like too religious.
That's what I was gonna say. Like that seems anti-Soviet. But...
Well, I mean, like, yeah, they were just like, this religion shit. You gotta tone it down, dude. Because yeah, so that was his next big one. But then there was 1972. He released Solaris, which is a like science fiction film. That was the third. That was the certain like third assigned viewing. Did anybody watch that besides Justin and me?
I have not seen the original Solaris.
Okay, Justin, what'd you think?
I thought that the cinematography is probably the best as far as originality is concerned. The best cinematography I've ever seen in a film. It was really slow. Like for me
it's a slow burn, absolutely.
As a viewer, and like. I have ADHD, so sitting through any film is always a challenge for
and
me,
that's like 2
right?
3/4 hours.
Sure,
yeah,
but I
so
watched
it's a
the
rough
whole
one.
goddamn thing. But there was a lot of times where I was just like, oh fuck, what's happening? Like let's move forward, please. The first 40 minutes of the film were setting up the rest of the film, which is very weird.
So basically the story of Solaris is about this psychologist who goes to this space station that's studying this planet that's been discovered called Solaris, but this space station's gone out of like they haven't been communicating, so they send this psychologist to figure out what the hell's happening, and it takes place on this, and like there's weird the planet's creating like copies of people from their memories. But yeah, the first 40 minutes is on Earth with the psychologist like talking to his dad, and then like
he's like, wait, I'm going to space.
And then like a pilot who's talking about like his experience flying by Solaris. But
anyway, so I mean, all of that withstanding, there's nothing that you will find in any like at least major sections in any sci-fi, horror, suspense, even really film in general that doesn't draw heavily on Solaris. So like this shit was groundbreaking as fuck. I mean, the way that they like play on the anxiety of the people, the way they play on the relationship between him and his wife, who he knows is fake for the entire film.
Right.
Like there's so much shit going on there that you have seen played over and over and over again in dozens of other sci-fi films, on top of, like I said, the cinematography, which is fantastic.
Yeah, so Tarkovsky, he did some more science fiction. He did Stalker in 1979, which is loosely based on the book Roadside Picnic by the Strugatsky brothers, I think. It's held up as classic. Yeah, so, and then he did a couple more movies in 1984. So he was having some, like, because of his issues with, like, editing and, like, releasing movies and stuff with Goskino and Mosfilm, which was, like, the Moscow Films Studio. In 1984, he defected. Like, he was, like, he was giving a press conference. Well, hold on. He was giving a press conference in Italy, and he was like, I'm not moving back to the Soviet Union. And listen, it was awful. Like, he was heartbroken. So someone at this press conference was like, "Oh, are you going to seek asylum in Italy?" And he said, "I'm telling you a drama. Like, this is a direct quote. I'm telling you a drama. You can't ask me bureaucratic questions. Which country? I don't know. It's like asking me which cemetery I'm going to bury my children in."
Damn.
And he later was like he gave another interview later. He's like, "I personally can't imagine how I'm going to live here. I can't really say whether I'm going to be able to cope." It was so important to him to be able to release his movies that he had to move. He felt like he had to move, and he and it killed him. He literally died 2 years later of lung cancer, but like
Comrade lung cancer.
no,
this
fuck off.
hour.
No,
Stop
Tarkovsky.
it.
No, Tarkovsky was good. And like, listen, you're gonna defend Gorbachev?
No, of course not.
Well, that's what he was up against. He was up against Gorbachev's government. Fuck you. No,
But
and
he's
like,
up against censorship, stuff like that.
well, no, and so yeah, no, but it killed. Like, he was heartbroken to leave the Soviet Union, which was a country he grew up in. Like, he was a thoroughly Soviet film director, but he just like he wanted to make a movie. Like, he wanted to make movies that he didn't think were gonna get released. But yeah, and then the 80s, and then 1991, the Soviet Union collapsed, and the world sucks now.
True.
Yeah, but so I mean that's the 2.5 hour history of like 80 years of cinema.
It'll get edited down to like 2 hours and 10 minutes.
So my big takeaway from this whole 80 years of Soviet cinema, my big takeaway is that is the importance of art in a socialist society. I mean, when we talk about socialist societies, we talk a lot about the productive forces like manufacturing, and we talk about medicine, and we talk about food, and we talk about all of those things, which are obviously hugely important and necessary for life. But another important thing is art, because that is a very fundamentally human endeavor, and I think it's very important that the Soviet Union subsidized art and took a very active role in the creation of art and looked at the ideological content of the art that they were creating. Like I said earlier, there's a lot of stuff that I maybe have criticisms in how certain things were addressed in terms of specifically socialist realism, which I think is an important and a very important art movement and a valuable art movement. I mean, God, those couple. Did I share this to the Discord? Like, there's the one, like, the soldier standing in the Tsar's throne room.
Yeah.
And then the one with the guy picking up the red flag from his dead comrade. Like, yeah, and there's a lot of socialist realist paintings of, like, Stalin wearing this, like, white uniform and, like, yeah, it's great. I think socialist realism is important as a movement, absolutely. Like, I think that any socialist society needs to look at socialist realism. But there's a really, let me see if I still have it up. There's a piece from Che Guevara, actually. You may have heard of him. He's
Who?
Vera?
He wrote an article. Is it Guevara or Guevara?
Guevara.
Guevara. Sorry. Yeah.
That's terrible pronunciation.
Guevara. There's a piece from Che Guevara who wrote Socialism and Man in Cuba and humanity, not just man. He had he's talking about a bunch of different things, and this is an interesting. Like, we think of Che as just this guerrilla, but he was a theorist. Like, he was a thinker. Like, he was an important socialist.
He was the child of a bourgeois family, and therefore
He's a class trader.
You must discredit everything that he ever said.
Class trader.
Yeah, who wasn't? Stalin.
No, but so he in this thing he talks about he has a whole section on artistic experimentation, and he's criticizing the Soviet Union specifically for socialist realism, and he says what is sought is simplification, something everyone can understand, something functionaries understand. True artistic experimentation ends, and the problem of general culture is reduced to assimilating the socialist present and the dead, therefore not dangerous, past. Thus, socialist realism arises upon the foundations of the art of the last century. The realistic art of the 19th century, however, also has a class character, more purely capitalistic, perhaps, than the decadent art of the 20th century that reveals the anguish of the alienated individual. So he's talking about socialist realism, like, yeah, it's a good idea, but it can get stagnant, and I would argue that this kind of happened in the Soviet Union. Is that, like, we've got socialist realism, like that's what we're doing. We're gonna do art in that, and I'm like, well, whatever. We're not gonna really experiment. And yeah, so I would argue with that. And I mean, obviously there is so in the United States, the CIA was funding abstract expressionism and stuff,
Right.
which is complicated because, like, I think our abstract expressionism is a valuable art form. But the CIA was explicitly doing this to counter socialist realism.
Right.
They were like, this realism shit, fuck it, we're gonna go as far in the opposite direction. So anyway, my point is that I think that the social society that I want to see, that I want to live in, encourages artistic experimentation, but is also fully aware at all times of the ideological content of the art that's being created. You can experiment without like shitting out capitalist ideology.
Yeah,
and,
no, I agree.
And I think the Soviet Union they were like, listen, like, we don't want any like capitalist shit, so we're gonna stick with this socialist realism thing. I understand where that came from. The material conditions of the Soviet Union, like, I understand where that came from. I think that as leftists now, in our ideal socialist society that we need in the next 12 years, is that we need experimentation. We need finding new forms of artistic expression, of new ways to express the values of like the new socialist person. And it doesn't just look like one specific artistic ideology or one form of artistic expression. And so, but the main thing to take away is that the Soviet Union did encourage and subsidize artistic expression at all
across
points.
the board.
I mean, like, there's one of my favorite propaganda posters from the Soviet Union is like, there's like, in a capitalist society, and it's this violinist, this young violinist standing in the rain, like holding his violin, and it's like in a social society, he's like playing in front of a huge audience, like and that's exactly what it looks like. Art needs to be subsidized. Art is important, and art is just as important to human society as food and medicine. It's part of it. You can't have it without that. And so that's my big takeaway from studying Soviet cinema and all these things. I would recommend look up these films that we talked about. Look up any Soviet films. Like, some of them are good, some of them are not. But like, it's a peek at a different world. Like, it just suggests that a different world is possible. Sure. And I think that as socialists, that's one of the main things that we can. That's one of the main things we need to be saying, is that like, it doesn't have to be like this. There's this idea that under utopia in utopia, like, there wouldn't be any struggle, and so we wouldn't be able to create any art. Like, that's
okay, Dr. Jordan Peterson.
Yeah, exactly. Cultural Marxism. No, like, that's bullshit. Like, that is absolute like horseshit, dog shit. Like, all these animals shit. No, like
every kind of shit.
Like, that's so false. Like, I said it. I think I said it like 6 months ago on whatever episode that was that I did. But like,
some episode.
Yeah, some episode. Socialism isn't the end of like human expression. Like, it's the beginning of it. Like, it's the first time that we're able to actually not be animals, like dogs, trying to deal with, like, trying to create art from the gutter. It's actually us able to actually express the human experience without worrying about
will this sell.
Without worrying about will this sell, will I make enough money to like feed my family, to house my family, like all of this. So socialist art, so important.
So the next segment, we're gonna keep this brief. So we're on to Seeing Red now. I've only got one example because this episode has gone on long, and it's in response to I'm sure most people have seen this meme, but it's a picture of George Washington and then Lenin.
Wait, is like Seeing Red a meme?
No,
like an image macro.
It's a response to a meme.
Okay,
and it's like in the middle between George Washington and Lenin. It was like, one of these people liberated his people, the other owned slaves, and blah 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 blah, whatever. Anyway, so this extremely fucking stupid person says, "Sorry, didn't know Lenin started a world superpower."
There's
oh my fucking god!
There's no way to respond. You don't need to respond to that.
That's why I chose it, because it's so fucking ludicrous. Like, what do you even say to that?
It's self-contained.
It's so bad. Radical self-ownership.
All right.
Seeing Red. That's
I can't even be mad.
No, that's it. It's so funny.
Like
sorry.
Palm moment.
Yeah. Anyway, so that'll be all for Proles of the Roundtable. This episode on Soviet cinema. There'll be suggested reading in the show notes. If you have any interest in donating to our Patreon, You get some neat treats. That'll be patreon.com/prolespod. Please don't forget to rate and review on your favorite podcast app. Like us on facebook.com/prolespod. Follow us on Twitter @prolespod. If you have any feedback, topic ideas, or suggestions, feel free to send us an email at prolespod@gmail.com. Thanks for tuning in. Solidarity forever. Good night.
Wah, wah.
Bye.
Bye.
Ровный бег моей судьбы, ночь, печаль и блеск души, лунный свет и майский дождь в небесах. Долгий век моей звезды, сонный блеск земной росы, громкий смех и райский мед в небесах. На заре голоса зовут меня. На заре голоса зовут меня. Солнце свет и сердце звук, робкий взгляд и сила рук, звездный час моей